It's time for Windows Weekly. Richard Campbell is here. Paul Thurrott. They're both at home, weirdly enough. We will talk about the never-ending Microsoft Activision acquisition, now a concession to the UK. But is it enough? Paul says, seriously, what's wrong with you people? Weekday, we get a preview of next month's patch Tuesday, and we'll talk about AI. Paul will say, ask the ultimate question. Why, Bing? Why? All that and more coming up next on Windows Weekly. Maybe Bing knows.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott, episode 843, recorded Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. The Drawer of Broken Dreams. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Lookout. Whether on a device or in the cloud, your business data is always on the move. Minimize risk, increase visibility, and ensure compliance with Lookout's unified platform. Visit lookout.com today. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. There is quite a bit of news this week. Thankfully, we have people who really know what's going on here. Rich Campbell from Run As Radio and .NET Rocks. Hello, Richard.
Hello, friend.
Friend. I always thought that was a weird thing to call somebody friend. It's like a little, I don't know.
Hello, bub.
Hey,
Hello,
bub.
pal.
Bub, I prefer pal.
You're the bub. Better than Newman.
Hello.
Newman. Hello,
Hello, Thurrott.
Hello, Leo.
Paul Thurrott is here from Thurrott.com. His book's at leanpub.com. Hello. So I have a question before we get into this.
Yep.
Because I know you're going to get it back into this.
I should have taken some gummies before this. I don't know what's going on.
By the way, that's the only ad I see on X now is Cheech and Chong's gummies. And that's how I know I'm living in the future, right?
There you go.
Someday, man, you'll be able to go into a store and buy edibles, man.
Yep.
No. Legal, man. There is a Surface event coming up on the 21st. I don't see this in your notes.
Yes, it is. It's buried in here. It's under Windows 11 something.
So the only thing I'm going to ask
you,
you, because I need to,
Yep.
is we should cover that, I presume. It's a Surface
yeah, assuming
event.
they're going to
Surface.
we'll talk about
Okay.
that. Yeah, I think
And
it is going to be an in-person event. And
it is.
I assume.
I see it
assume they're
here.
going to.
Yeah. Your head is, Rich's head is floating on it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they say what time it is, or whether they'll stream it?
All they said was you're invited, and we'll get back to you.
Great.
Yeah. Well, at least I was invited. I mean, the way things are going these days. I mean, who can say?
All right, we'll get to that. But first,
Yeah.
we gotta talk to you about the CMA, about the UK, the United Kingdom. Microsoft has made them an offer they cannot refuse.
Actually, Microsoft made them offer they did refuse, which is the problem. I don't even.
It's unbelievable.
I'm going to
Truly.
try so hard to be calm during this segment. I expressed my belief that the CMA is out of its frickin' mind and has no idea what it's talking about and is the least responsible regulatory body on earth, and that the arguments it's made against this acquisition literally make no sense. They involve future crimes about some non-existent market that's never going to be a market. And by the way, the solution that we're going to get to that Microsoft is proposing doesn't fix anything, but we'll get to that because this whole thing
I
is,
don't even know why they offered it.
it's a crazy big, you know what though, but the CMA is so stupid. They're probably going to be, okay, we'll get to that. Because just like, I'm trying. I really am trying. So everybody, well, not everybody, but most people probably know at least most of the convolutions that occurred over the past couple of months with the CMA and Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, right? The CMA was betting on the FTC prevailing. They latched their horse onto that, and that failed. And that now they're hanging and, blowing in the wind. And my belief until about 36 hours ago was that they understood that they had made a huge mistake when they ruled against this thing, when they blocked it. The competition commissioner from the EU back in May gave a wonderful speech where she explained exactly why And she did this very politely, but said that the decision of the CMA was wrong. This is not the role of antitrust. It's not just to block things. It's to do the best thing for the market. And that means protecting consumers and or competition, however you want to look at it, depending on the jurisdiction. And that Microsoft's not remedies, but the concessions they offered met the needs of the antitrust concerns, and they passed it. They allowed, they're allowing the deal. The FTC lost, as we know, after a hearing. They appealed, lost that too. I don't know why Microsoft didn't just conclude this transaction at that time, but they didn't. They decided to work with the CMA. And the CMA backtracked. They stepped back from the cliff. They said, we don't really ever do this, but we're going to revisit this decision because the information has come to light that Microsoft's going to provide us with. This is the information that came to light during the FTC hearing, allegedly. I don't really think there's any new information there. I will say, we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
When the CMA published Microsoft's rationale for why this deal should now be allowed, it was notable in that there were no new concessions, right? They didn't offer them a single thing. They just said, look, nothing has changed, but now we have this, they called it evidence, but information that came out during the FTC hearings that I think will cause you, the CMA, to step back and say, okay, actually, this makes sense. Also, the EU approved the deal and had legally binding agreements by Microsoft that required them to do certain things that also address the CMA's concerns, specifically with cloud gaming, this cloud streaming thing that they're really just hung up on for some crazy reason.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if the gaming world is a big pie, 50% of it is mobile. The rest of it is like 40%, 50%-ish of PC console. Used to be console was a little bigger. Now PC is a little bigger. And then there's this one pixel wide nothing that amounts to nothing, and that's cloud streaming. And Google entered this market and left. Microsoft entered this market and realized it could not offer it as a standalone product. So they offer it only as a perk, as their most expensive Game Pass subscription. And what they have found over the last year or two is that people use it to look at something and then they go download it or buy it. They don't play it that way because most games, frankly, do not work well streaming.
Latency matters.
Yeah,
oddly enough.
Yep. And one of the games I tried to play on both Stadia and I guess it was cloud gaming back in the day was the Doom Eternal. And it's, Doom already that game has a weird effect where you feel like you're running on ice. It's got that, it doesn't feel natural. And when you stream it, it's even worse. The effect is just exaggerated. So, you go by a monster and you keep going, you're like trying to shoot it, but you keep going because it's still reading the joystick input or whatever, the controller input from before. Anyhow, positive that we were engaging in something that I call regulatory theater, that the CMA was going to look at this thing, let a bunch of time go by, pretend they're evaluating it, right? And then come out and say, okay, you know what? You're right. This evidence does.
With the concessions as outlined, not that there were any, but just say it that way.
Well, the concessions that were offered to the EU, Microsoft has made I know there are people out there who just don't want the bigger to get bigger. And I completely understand that. We've had that kind of joking discussion with Leo, for example, but I hear from those people all the time. I just don't want them getting more or getting bigger or, whatever it is. And listen, I hear you, but whatever. So
it was Kotick who simply said, cut the UK out of the deal then.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, just pretend they don't exist because no offense if you're from the UK. I love the UK, but from a size of market perspective,
this is not worth. It's a $75 billion deal.
And it's worldwide, and this tiny country with a very small relatively speaking, population is blocking this deal. And the regulatory body doing it is not elected. They don't represent the will of the future. They have now 3 times asked for the feedback from their residents, from gamers, from game companies, and every time they've heard the same thing. Yeah, we don't care. Just do it. We don't care.
Let's move on.
I'm
really looking forward to see if the New Zealand Commerce Commission gets back in on this now too. So it's still good for the CMA.
Oh, boy. All right, please don't. So, all right. So Microsoft came back with something that I think is a little crazy. Frankly, I don't think this makes any sense. We're going to get into this, and I ended up having to do a very careful reading of the 2 announcements because there's one from Microsoft and there's one from this other company we'll get to in a moment. because the EU, in the wake of this, said, "Wait a minute, we have these legally binding agreements with Microsoft. Does this thing screw any of that up?"
Right.
And we're going to get to that. But so here's the deal, and this is so weird to me. And this applies worldwide, not in the UK. It's worldwide except for the EU, because the EU has already said okay to this.
But so is a bunch of other countries, too.
I know. I know. That's what they said. I'm just saying. I was going to say, as has the rest of the world, right?
Right.
Okay. But this is worldwide. And so Microsoft is going to license to Ubisoft, which is another a game publisher, right?
Right.
That they will have the word exclusive does not appear here. It's very easy to say exclusive. It's not exclusive, but any Activision Blizzard games that are currently available or will be available over the next 15 years, by the way, not 10, 15 years, will go through Ubisoft Plus, which is a game subscription service that I bet most of you did not know anything about.
No.
So there are 2 tiers. The announcement does not mention that, but actually, technically, there are sort of 3 tiers because there's a add-on for PlayStation, but we'll call it 2 tiers. The more expensive tier is called multi-access. That is the tier that's going to get these games. So it's actually not going to be like, in other words, if this went through Xbox Game Pass,
right.
That's not true. Actually, that's not true. Okay, no, it will be going through Xbox Game Pass. I'm sorry. There's so much nuance here. Let's just talk cloud gaming for one moment. Sorry. This is just cloud gaming. I should say up front. I can already feel myself getting excited here. I should just say up front. This does not impact the retail availability of games, right? Digital or physical.
This is purely about quote unquote cloud gaming, the thing that doesn't exist.
So if you are a Game Pass subscriber, right? Xbox, PC, or Ultimate, you will still be able to get these games there. You'll just have to download them. You can't stream them. Okay. So Ubisoft Plus multi-access will be the exclusive place outside of the EU. So stupid. To get any of the Activision Blizzard games in streaming form. That's going to be it for 15 years.
They should call it Multipass. It's
Multipass. Yes, exactly. That's right. One of the best movies ever made.
The only thing that I think is clever in this whole thing, and I wonder if it's really about, is that Ubisoft is headquartered in France, which means you just drank the EU.
You just
that's the whole point.
Nailed
Did I out your punchline?
This is my punchline. No, but I love that you know that and thought of that because you're smart, and of course you did. But
well, it has to be a European company. I mean,
well, but wouldn't it be a UK company?
No, it's so much better. It's a European company.
Is there a UK? Oh, there is that company.
The children fight with each other.
I mean, but the point of this is you are a UK regulator. You're not in the EU.
That's a good point.
Why would this is like the FTC propping up Sony and Microsoft Activision Blizzard?
Yeah.
Is the UK now propping up a French software house? You can't make this stuff up.
I love it. It's a moment as soon as that hit me, I'm like, Brad Smith may be a genius. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to make your life worse. I don't make it worse further. Like now, if they refuse that deal, they're upsetting Ubisoft. Like this is.
Well, upsetting Europe, I guess. But I mean, the UK should be used to that by now. So here's the thing. I've established, I think it's a fact objectively that cloud gaming today is nothing. Even all the key game industry players who showed up at the FTC hearing, including the guy who runs PlayStation America, the guy who used to run Stadia, have all said this is not a market and it will not be for the foreseeable future.
Until physics changes and the speed of light can be exceeded.
Yeah. So there's $69 billion worth of value in Activision Blizzard. There's probably about $17 worth of value in cloud gaming, but we're going to slice that off and we're going to hold the rest of this deal in balance. And I say that because, by the way, cloud gaming, not profitable. We're going to hold this whole thing in the balance so that you can make this decision about this non-entity and do something different with it and complicate this deal. And I just don't understand why we're even bothering. The answer to this should have been like, no, F you. We're just doing it and you can deal with it later after the fact in court. We're not doing this.
Sure. Tell us what services you want us to turn off to be compliant in your country. And you can explain to your citizens why they don't have access to that.
Why you're a non-voted in commission of idiots decided to do this. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
I honestly think this is funnier. Like this is actually funnier.
It would be funny to me if I wasn't. I just need this to end. Like I don't.
Not,
no. I know. So now
because
we're going to go to
the big thing that's upsetting you is he just made it longer. That's what's really happened.
Nonsensical is tough on me. Nonsensical over a long period of time it's just, I have a hard time with this. Yes.
No. This in a lot of ways, this reads like a threat. It's like, I'll get the French involved. You'll love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, so here's the thing. All right. So this stupidity just happened, right? I just mentioned that the EU, the European Commission, the EC, which is their antitrust regulatory body, had already approved this deal and got concessions out of Microsoft, which are legally binding, which is one of the things that Microsoft went to the CMA with, saying, look, you don't have to do anything extra. We can't do things that you think we're going to do because we still have to deal with these guys.
Right.
Well, the EC now has issued a statement. It's very short and it's very troubling. It says the commission is carefully assessing whether the developments in the UK require another notification to the commission. A notification. What does that mean? Right? Does this mean that they have concerns that this deal will contradict the legal requirements of their deal with Microsoft? So,
yeah, I went to the EU's mad at here. I don't think they're mad at Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, so here I mentioned the word exclusive. This is an important part of it. So, part of the issue here is we don't know a lot of details about the Ubisoft thing. For example, we know that there's going to be an unstated amount of lump sum that Ubisoft will pay to Microsoft upfront for this. So we'll find out more.
I'm betting $1.
Okay, that's fine. So we also know that Microsoft will be paid based on some usage metric, which they've only described very vaguely, for the games that are streamed over Ubisoft Plus. So Microsoft is going to make money from this. The CMA has taken a product that is a money loser for Microsoft and figured out a way to generate revenues and probably in profits because someone else is going to foot the bill. Right. Classic. Okay, good job, CMA. Okay, that's hilarious. However, I keep saying exclusive. Nowhere does the word exclusive appear in the public descriptions of these of this agreement. Now, Brad Smith from Microsoft actually does use 2 renditions of the word exclusive, but not related to this particular topic. So that's not in there. What Ubisoft says is that it has cloud streaming rights to games like Call of Duty and more, and then later, actually it doesn't matter. It's basically it's all Activision Blizzard games is what it really is. It does not say anything about these being exclusive, right? So that's kind of a soft evidence thing for me, because Ubisoft wants to talk about Ubisoft. They wouldn't necessarily talk about other things, but Microsoft literally never says exclusive. So going back to the EU and this notion that all of Microsoft, the deal with the EU was that all of Microsoft's cloud streaming games would be available to competitors, basically, and so this says to me that Ubisoft will not be the only company doing this, right? That it is still going to allow other companies to do that. And Brad Smith says explicitly, he writes, Microsoft is engaged he says, we will maintain, we did this believing that we're in full compliance with the EU's commitments, with our commitments to the EU. It will still honor its legal obligations, right? Of course, it has to. And this tells me that Microsoft could, in fact, possibly release Activision titles on Xbox Cloud Gaming, but could definitely allow third parties to release those games, and has to actually, according to their EU thing. So I think
I'm sure the 2 people who use it are going to be really excited.
Yeah, the thing is, the game everyone talks about here is Call of Duty. Right. Call of Duty is not playable via cloud streaming. No. Most of Call of Duty occurs in a multiplayer arena that absolutely would never work with cloud streaming. So this doesn't. We are literally, this is the ultimate example of much ado about nothing, which is classic because, as I said to Brad the other day, I referred to this as regulatory theater, but I forgot how much the British love the theater because they are going on and on and on and on and are not going to stop. And we'll see. So here's my expectation. The EU is going to be fine with this. As stupid as it is, I would love to have them come out and say, this doesn't violate our agreement, but what the fuck, this doesn't make any sense. Stupid. Microsoft can license Activision Blizzard games and other games, right? Their own games to rival services, right? Not just the one. And I think that's what's going to happen. The trick here is, does the CMA fall for this? And I would say, based on the evidence so far, where they keep harping on this one thing, cloud gaming, and how stupid this is, and how this doesn't address any concerns at all, I would say, yeah, they're probably going to approve it because it's stupid, and they're stupid. And I don't understand what goes on in their brains. It makes no sense. The things that they're concerned about don't make any sense.
Yeah. So. And now they have a solution that doesn't make any sense, so they should be happy.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they could be like, oh, yeah, that's totally good. Like, what is wrong with you people?
Build us a concession.
Yeah. I will say, because we talked about this on the show at the time, and I mentioned this earlier, but I think it bears noting again. It was notable, right, that after all this stuff, after the 18, 20 months, whatever it was, that Microsoft came back to the CMA knowing that this acquisition was on the line and decided not to offer a single concession. They were like, yeah, no, here's my hands. This is what I got.
Yeah.
I thought that was ballsy. However you want to say that.
I find it hilarious. Other than, again, they've got till October and it's only August. So clearly they needed something to do for a couple of months. It's like, you remember when you thought you were going to have a little bit of summer vacation? How about no?
Remember the week that Microsoft, the FTC lost the judge ruled against the FTC, and they filed an emergency motion, worried that Microsoft was what I called a flight risk. In other words, that they would just immediately consume Activision Blizzard and to bypass any future legal challenges. And they went before a judge and lost again. And so that was on a Friday night. I told the story, but I took a laptop on a hot air balloon in July, convinced that Activision Blizzard would be acquired by Microsoft that weekend. And now it probably won't happen until the third week of October.
Yep.
And seriously, how is this taking so long? I don't know. CMA.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's extraordinary, and it's dumb.
Yep. Dumb. So that's that was the big thing that happened this week.
I really was thinking this wasn't going to be at the top of the page anymore. I thought we were
sorry. So were everybody else in the whole.
Well, no, I there's going to come a day, I thought this day would have come by now, where Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard. I felt like that would be a thing we could have right up front, and we could just say, hey, the acquisition occurred. Sorry it took so long. And then let's talk about Windows 11. Because the only thing that's interesting after that happens is what is Microsoft's plans for all of that, all the IP and the assets and everything. How are they going to do it? So one of the we're not going to talk about this for whatever reason. I don't know why, but there's a new Call of Duty game coming out this year, which doesn't make new one comes out every year, but it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, which is a sequel to the game that came out last year, which is something they've never done before. We may have talked about that aspect of it. That has the feel of the original team, the pre-Microsoft world going out with a bang, right? Because Call of Duty is a game that since, I don't know what year, probably the original Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, has earned $1 billion in some silly number of days every year. So 1 to 2 days, typically something like that, they earn $1 billion. And one of the issues with, one of the interesting things about Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard is they have Game Pass, and they have cloud gaming to a lesser degree. And they tend to make first-party studio games, not tend to, they literally do make all first-party studio games available in those services day one. And now they can't do that with the cloud part of it, but who cares? And if Microsoft made Call of Duty, whatever, 2023 or 2024 available via Game Pass on day one, would that not destroy that $1 billion record thing that they do every year? I think it would, right? Because Game Pass would see a surge in subscribers. All of a sudden, I have access to all the Call of Duty games, including the new stuff on day one, on all the machines, if I want it that way. And that's a better deal than buying the thing outright. And I think that makes Call of Duty and all Activision Blizzard games potentially a little less valuable on a big bang, Hollywood style release schedule, which has been the market so far. So I would like to know, and I think gamers would like to know, what are they going to do? Are they going to have staggered releases? Like, is Call of Duty so big that like each October it actually comes out at retail? Do you have to buy it? But then January, March, whatever time of the year, then they put it on Game Pass? I mean, we're going to find out, but that will be interesting. And that's about it, right? I mean, the only thing interesting, then it's just like Scrooge McDuck counting his money. It's just how many games do we have at Game Pass now? We have a bunch, sitting on a pile of games. But,
amazing.
Yeah, but now we just have the CMA putting this thing off. Not into delayed gratification, but my God, like seriously, $69 billion. And it's, geez, they had so much time to do this.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
This could have been done 6 months ago, 9 months ago.
That's what somebody actually said, in my comments. Well, I don't see what the rush is here. And it's like, the rush? They announced this during the pandemic. What are you talking about? Rush. We're closing in on 2 years. There's no rush. This is the kid who woke up the morning that an essay was due and started writing it at breakfast. That's what the CMA just did. So the rush is you did this to yourself. Like the CMA. I mean, I don't know. The rush. I don't know. I would ignore this regulatory body and I would just do this. I don't. That would be my strategy. But I'm not a businessman. I guess technically I am. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know.
You are now.
I control $67, not 67 billion. So what am I now? Or $69 or whatever it is. So there you go.
There you have it. Fantastic.
Okay.
It's great news. I don't know.
Is it? It's news.
It's news.
It is news. That's correct.
It is news.
Well, thank you for joining us on Activision Weekly, and come back next week.
Hey,
for more.
$69 billion.
No, it's a bit. You do not need to justify it. I'm teasing, as is Zumo in our Discord, who called it that. This is the biggest, huge story. This is the biggest acquisition Microsoft's ever made.
That's right.
It's massive. Maybe one of the biggest acquisitions in tech until Apple buys Disney for $190 billion. But until then, this is it.
Yeah. Don't discount that either.
We had a long conversation on MacBreak Weekly about that. I am of the opinion that's not going to happen, but you never know.
Does anyone? What was the Yahoo number?
What? Right.
Microsoft was going to buy Yahoo for what?
21 billion. 21 billion.
Oh, 21.
21 billion.
Yeah. And that was the one where they went, that was close. We almost got
it. Exactly. Right.
Oh boy, baby, we almost spent 21 billion on a dog.
All the people in Windows Live who were looking at losing their jobs and consolidating products were like, oh, thank God.
And now look at them.
Yeah. Windows Live Hotmail still a thing.
It's still a thing. Is it?
Except they call it Outlook.com now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. SkyDrive, running strong.
SkyDrive. I forgot about that. Yeah. SkyDrive, now known as OneDrive.
Windows Live Writer.
Loved that. We loved that. That was the blog posting thingamajiggy.
It's great.
Windows Live Photos was good too.
Is there any analog to that? Did they just kill it? They just killed the code base.
The Writer?
Yeah.
When you go back to the original Internet Tidal Wave memo and you look at what Microsoft did with like user-facing kind of web publishing tools, there were like 50. And there was a point in time where Word was going to be that thing, where Publisher was going to be that thing.
Yeah.
There was a thing called Front Page, obviously, and
Front
Visual
Page,
Interdev.
who can ever forget?
They went through a whole, and no, Windows Live Writer was a...
There's a box, by the way, at the Computer History Museum. There's a box of Front Page right there.
Nice. Yeah. Front Page was a good product for the day.
I think I did a Windows Weekly from one of the Channel 9 studios that had a front page box in the background too.
Hysterical.
Yeah, this was the VTI bin folders and all that crap that actually persisted for many years. It was a big part of the
because if you used it, you were screwed because no open tool would work because of all the extensions.
This was called it was the Front Page. I think it was just called the Front Page extensions, but they existed in IIS for years and years and years. Like even when Front Page went away, this was
Listen, one of the things that happens in this move is I retire my Active Directory infrastructure by turning it off. And I literally migrated a PDC BDC implementation of Server 2000 to Active Directory in 2000.
Just to be clear, what he's saying, it's primary and backup, right? Or primary and secondary, whatever. Domain controller.
Domain controller before.
In a world in which you had to have one that was primary.
Yeah,
it's just such a stupid way.
Which, by the way, in Active Directory, you still do. They're now called the FSMO roles, but who cares?
Yeah.
I have front page accounts still in this Active Directory. This Active Directory is the archaeological dig of every Active Directory.
So
feature.
we're gonna talk about my little data archive I've been going through from my NAS and up on OneDrive. But I have 50 something gigabytes of website archives, and there's a ton of front page in there.
See, by the way, I'm going to tear up my betting ticket because I was really sure you'd lead with the Python in Excel story, but
I don't even have that.
You don't even have that in your rundown. So, boy, I lost it. I picked a trifecta. I thought, it's clearly going to be the Surface event, Python and Excel, and then I don't know what the third one would be.
I like to defy expectations.
Yeah, you do.
I talked to Laurent, who writes most of our news, about the Excel thing, and we were both like, I don't know.
I bet you Richard might have something to say about it, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Guido works for Microsoft now. It had to happen, right?
Oh, yeah. Is that how that happened?
Yeah.
Guido von Rossum, the creator of Python. I didn't know. Is he he must be a fellow,
It's a curious choice if you're going to have one language.
Python,
right? No, but you think that's the obvious choice in a Microsoft world?
I'll tell you why. Because it's very widely used by data scientists. They all use Python.
All right, that's fair enough.
And so the ability to use your Python code with Excel is, I think, I might be wrong, but I think for data scientists, they're jumping up and down.
If what you're doing with Excel, which a lot of people do, is doing data analytics,
right?
Then Python's a great ad. By the way, he's
PyTorch.
He's a distinguished engineer at Microsoft.
Yeah, I knew he wasn't down there in the trenches.
They didn't put him on Microsoft Paint.
Guido, could you work on a paint tool for us?
See if you can figure out dark mode for paint, and then we'll talk. Okay.
No, but if he did that, I don't know. I wonder if he even did that. But I think that's the right thing to do. That's somebody who said.
I'm sure he was involved.
Yeah, somebody who said, data scientists, they all use Python. Sure. It would be. They also use Excel. We know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you're supposed to use Power BI. Didn't you get the note?
I guess you could if you really didn't like yourself much. Let's take a little tiny break, and we will get on to the stuff you came for, like Windows.
I think Activision was the stuff a lot of people.
I'm teasing. I like to tease. I tease. I'm a teaser. I like to needle. Our show today brought to you by this is a long-time friend of mine, Lookout. I've used Lookout they've been around for a long time. Great security company, and with a great new product. The business has changed forever. Boundaries to where we work, even how we work, have disappeared. Right? Go downtown in San Francisco. It's deserted. Nobody's going into the office anymore. That means your data is always on the move, whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, at the local coffee shop, in Bermuda. Well, that's great for your workforce. I mean, they're happy. It is maybe a little challenge for IT security. Lookout helps you control your data and free your workforce. With Lookout, complete visibility into your data so you can minimize risk from internal and external threats. Yes, internal threats. Actually, these days are even worse, more to worry about. And here's the other part, and this has become more and more part of the conversation: compliance. Lookout ensures compliance as well. By seamlessly securing hybrid work, your organization does not have to sacrifice productivity for security. And Lookout makes IT security a lot simpler too. Working with multiple point solutions as you do and legacy tools in today's environment, not just too complex, it's a recipe for disaster. Lots of stuff can slip through the cracks between those different tools. With Lookout's single, unified platform, it reduces IT complexity, it improves results, and gives you more time to work on whatever else is coming your way. Good data protection. It's not a cage, it's a springboard, letting you and your organization bound toward the future of your making. Visit lookout.com today to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. Lookout.com. Now's the right time for Lookout. Did your wife take your chair, Richard? Is that what happened? And you had to fight with her and like wrestle her to the ground and get your chair back?
No. We were talking about real priorities here, Leo. They're moving my smoker.
Oh, wow. What kind of smoker do you have?
I have an Americu by Cook Shack.
I don't know that.
And I also have a big green egg.
Love the
so I was more worried about the big green egg because it's ceramic.
Yeah.
Sure.
The main reason I got the Americu. It'll break easy. I've had one break.
Have you?
But
all the king's horses and all the king's men.
Plus, it does look like Humpty Dumpty, but it's also very heavy.
Yeah, they're not trivial thing, but there are large humans walking around in here moving big heavy things. So
that's their job.
And unfortunately, one of them knew what it was. So I'm like, okay, well, as long as you know what it is, then I have faith it'll survive.
Maybe fill it full of towels and cover it with towels, something like that.
You know, who else has a big green
totally
egg?
cleaned it out.
Zuck has a big green egg.
There you go. Yeah, I see the picture.
It's on top of his shoulders.
But I can only do
that's the big
8
beige
side ribs in the big green egg, but I can do 24 racks of ribs in the Americu.
Nice.
And that's the important part.
I'm gonna have to look at the Americu.
It's a capacity thing.
My brother-in-law, Lisa's sister's husband, Joe, Uncle Joe, took a barrel, cut it up, made a real smoker. I said, "You have to put wood in it."
Sure.
He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you have to stay up all night?"
That's the original.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. He said, "Yeah."
I would call that hashtag McCungy life. You know,
sliced barrel.
Like when you walk outside and it's raining, you're like, nice. Free car wash. Hashtag McCungy life.
You know, I like acid rain because it cleans the bird poop off.
It gets that stuff right off the window.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
All that resin.
All right. Then the window slides off the car, but
we do have. I do have ash on my car. We had a few days of the fires.
That's right. That's right. There are fires in BC.
Yeah,
they're east of you. Well, most of them, right?
East and north. Yeah. So the wind reversed for a little while. Yeah.
Right.
So we had the climate down. At one point, we had 30,000 people evacuated. I think we're down to 9,000 now.
Is there any risk to your area, or?
No, not really. I mean, knock on wood, right? Like, who knows? We're surrounded by forest here too.
Well, yeah.
But,
well, all
4
sales
years ago got within 8 miles of us. All sales are final.
Well, and West Kelowna took some hits. Like that fire moved so fast, it took some homes. So the old Okanagan resort was burned to the ground.
I remember
losses, but the people got out. So I mean, folks who
it's not
survived.
like Lahaina. That's
terrifying.
Unbelievable.
How many more bodies are we going to find? You know,
several hundred. I think it's horrible.
I can't disagree.
Still 850 missing. Now maybe. Hopefully, some of those just haven't reported in, or
maybe. But I feel like by this point, we would. That's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm just. And the other thing that's happened is there are firefighters from all over the world here. South Africa, Australia, Costa Rica. Who knew?
Yeah.
Of course, there's a big American contingent. Like we don't talk about this much, but Canadians and Americans, we help each other every day.
You came down here. Believe me, we had a lot 100%. Of Canadian firefighters down here.
Well, I think they're returning the favor right now. And and then they evacuated Yellowknife, which is the capital of the Northwest Territories. It's 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and they're mostly here in BC. They flew them down. They're in the big one was evacuating the hospitals and the care homes and things like that. You just can't do that fast. But you think about it, like a 737 holds 150 people. You got to move 20,000 people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 100 something flights they did in 3 days.
Yep.
Incredible.
That's incredible.
The fire may not reach may not reach Yellowknife. Here's hoping. Things are going a little better right now. And it's just too far away from everything. Yellowknife is a long way away.
Yep.
What a world.
We're making it. And we're kind of good at forest fires around here. It's a thing.
Yeah, but that's been this year, right? You can be good at something like that, but this has been exceptional. It's just insane.
Well, that's what they said in Quebec. It's we've had 200-year fires in the past 4 years.
Right.
So.
Yep. Yeah, we certainly experienced the after effects of that, even where I live.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Anyway, we're hammering it through and grateful.
All right, let's resume the conversation.
Something a little less depressing.
Yeah. So, Windows 11. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not any list.
That's not depressing at all. Everything is good.
Oh, good news.
It's week D. It's
week
still good.
D, yay.
We're living with it, you know. So it's week D, as Richard, I think, said. And I'd forgotten about this for some reason, even though this has been my life for the past 6 months. But that means that yesterday, on Tuesday, Microsoft released the week D preview updates of versions of the cumulative updates. It will release for all supported versions of Windows next month on Patch Tuesday, right? Because of the nature of weeks, this is actually a 5-week break because there were 5 Tuesdays in the month or whatever. So it won't, I got that backwards. I guess it's a 5-week month. It doesn't matter. So normally these week D things sit between each week B, right? Okay. Last month, you may recall the week D the week. It's so hard to get this straight. Last month, the week D update, which was this past month's week B update, Patch Tuesday update, was the first for Windows 11 22 H2 not to include any new features. And the feeling is, we're heading into 23 H2. Maybe things are slowing down because we're pumping this up. But actually, this preview update has a couple of new features, nothing dramatic, nothing exciting. And one of them is something we expected to see in 23 H2, but it's here early, which is the new app defaults behavior that Microsoft announced back in, I think, March. This is literally nothing to get excited about. It's really kind of a back end change for developers who create apps so that, say you have an image viewing app or something, you just install it. The way Windows 11 works today is once any app that could take over a file type has been installed, you'll get that open with dialog where you can choose. In this case, what they're allowing app developers to do is when you install the app, there can be a link in the app that opens the right page in settings that will let you just make that change there. It doesn't let them make the change for you. That's been one of the big changes, not just in Windows 11, but we'll call it Windows 11 in recent years, Windows in recent years, which Microsoft is doing to make it harder to switch browsers, frankly, but they're acting like it's a user choice privacy thing. It's nonsense. But, that's one of the two things. And then the other thing is something Windows Phone fans will sort of remember from back in the day, which is that app developers can now create not just a primary pin on the taskbar. Remember, this was a thing on the start screen when we had tiles. There was this notion of primary and secondary tiles. Do you remember this? So, for example, if you had like the Outlook email app or whatever it was called at the time on Windows Phone, you could have a secondary tile that was a specific inbox, right? So you could have like my Yahoo inbox is one pin, my Hotmail inbox is one, my Gmail, whatever it was. And so they're allowing that for pins on the taskbar now. And so there's nothing to see there because no apps do any of this stuff. And I don't think these are going to have major impacts on anything, but that is in there. There's a new search box behavior, which I've installed this build on 2 PCs and have not seen, but apparently you can now get a hover on search. So if you think back to how widgets worked originally in Windows 11, and they finally fixed it to be more like Windows 10, if you mouse over widgets by default, widgets will come up. If you mouse over the icon in the taskbar. You can go into widgets, say, I don't want that. I just want it to appear when I click on it. They're now going to do that with search as well, because they're doing everything they can to drive you to search because it drives you to Microsoft's online services and advertising. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the third one is just for management for businesses, right? For managed environments. And this is a way that administrators can use policies to configure how monthly and optional cumulative updates and controlled feature rollouts, CFRs, are installed for their users, right? So this is something you cannot explicitly, let me just think about that for a second. Well, there's light configuration for this in Windows Update, meaning one slider that doesn't do much, but they're going to give managed businesses explicit control over that stuff because the way that Windows 11 updates has changed a lot this year. So this is kind of a new thing, and they're going to let businesses control that to some degree. Okay. So this update will arrive for everybody on Tuesday, September 12th. That is in 3 weeks, right? Because that 5-week thing, that's what I was getting at before. The second Tuesday of September. And then we're looking at 23H2, right?
Right.
So here's my guess. I think 23H2 has already been completed inside of Microsoft. It's August. It's the end of August. And this is not the type of thing they trumpet anymore. The way you will find out this has happened is Friday or next Tuesday or someday randomly, they'll say, hey, this 23H2 build range, where are we at? 22631, right? In the beta channel is going to release preview. Now that will be how they kind of do it. They're not going to say, oh, that's the next step on our way to final release. My expectation is that on week D of September, we will get 23H2 for seekers, for early adopters, and that it will go out broadly to everybody, so to speak, in October. Whatever the October Patch Tuesday date is, I'd have to look that up. So that's my guess. Not coincidentally, Leo mentioned this earlier, Microsoft has scheduled its first in-person Windows, I'm going to call it a Surface/Windows event in New York City. The Microsoft invite does not actually say anything about what it is, but these are based on sources.
Does it say Surface event, or did you add that? It's going to be a Surface event, though, right?
It is. However,
where's Panos Panay that day? That's the question.
Well, he will be there. So this is going to be. This is this day. The day this happens is a Thursday. This is the Thursday before the Patch Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not true. It's the Thursday before the week D Tuesday, at which they will almost certainly release 23H2. So my expectation is that we will see one or more of the following things. Some indication of how Surface integrates with these new features in Windows 11 23H2, which we'll talk about in a second because there really aren't that many. Or some indication about, or some more information about Windows Copilot, which is something that is sort of available today in the Insider program, depending on who you are. It's kind of a weird system they have, but almost certainly will be part of 23H2. And whether there's any improvements there over what we've seen so far, frankly, it's been kind of lackluster. Or the Windows 12 stuff, like the future of AI in Windows and that kind of thing. And I think because the reason I think this is, I've been told by a source that all of the new Surface devices coming in the future at the time when I was told this will have NPUs or whatever the equivalent is from whatever chipset maker. And I think this is going to be the big push. Whether this triggers a Surface/PC market buying spree is kind of unclear. I would say probably not, honestly, but it's all going to depend on what they show, right? Like, what does Microsoft and what do the PC makers show off that makes people excited to buy PCs? It can't be Windows Studio effects, right? We all have background blurring and follow your head and all that kind of baloney. That's very common now. That's been the big demo they have so far. It has to be more than that. Windows Copilot, kind of a dog, frankly. Maybe this would be a good time to come out and talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot and show how having an NPU or its equivalent on the client will help those experiences. Because ultimately, adding AI to Windows, to the shell, or as an edge instance, or to Paint, which is one of the recent rumors, or whatever, it's cute. But people are really using these kind of more complicated, more powerful apps like the ones in Microsoft Office and the services behind them. So I think that might be the better demo. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. But I think it's going to be some combination of those things.
So, and it would be worth us streaming.
Yeah.
If they stream it, we don't know, though. That's the problem. They may not. Right. They do. Yeah. They have a history of not streaming events when they invite the press like this. Yes.
I don't know, but they have a history of streaming them too. So, I mean, I would be, in this day and age, it doesn't make sense to come out publicly and say, we're going to show you something, only show it to press. And then, so I think my suspicion is they will go public with that. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, if it's going to be the MPU thing, then it should be new hardware. It should be Windows 12. It should be Windows Copilot.
Ooh, that would be huge if it's all of
you've got to make all those things make sense. It kind of they all go together.
Wow.
Like, how do you not do them all?
I look right as a continuum. In other words, today you're going to get this for free in Windows if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber, although commercial only, which is a little bit of a problem. You're going to get this other stuff. And then we have much bigger plans for this. And here's like an early peek at some of this, capabilities this hardware is going to enable. And this is why you're going to want to upgrade now. Although, frankly, with anything new, V2, V3 maybe would be a better choice. But, for average people. And
I'm in the market, right? Like I want a machine. This is the time. And that, if they're going to if there's a new version of the Studio with an MPU, I think I'm sold. Like, it's got fancy features I don't necessarily need, but I'll take fancy.
Yep. And one of the big question marks here, which is only a big question mark for people like me, I guess, but people sort of and us, I mean, people in the industry, whatever, is the timing of this suggests that we're not going to see anything Windows on ARM related, right? The next gen Windows and ARM stuff will not be announced until November, December, which is on the normal schedule. And that stuff won't ship until next year at the earliest, early next year, probably. So
there's just so little conversation going on around ARM that I can't be close unless they're really going to blindside us, which would be cool.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. If they allowed Microsoft to have an do the early peak thing, it's possible. I wouldn't discount it, but we'll see. So that's kind of interesting. So lately, with the understanding that 23H2 is being concluded this month at some point, and Microsoft has slowed down a little bit, honestly, with the builds. I've installed this on a few machines to kind of see what this looks like. And I have to say, it's kind of a weird mixed bag because, first of all, if you go through this, and Leo, right now, please do not follow anything I'm about to say. But if you were to go into settings,
settings,
and enable, Windows inside a program, enroll in the beta channel, reboot your computer, and then you install the build. One of the things you would have seen in the past is that first build that comes up, whatever it's called, takes a while to download and install. It's big.
Yeah.
This one does not take any time at all. And when you reboot, it comes right back. It's not one of those big feature update installs where a lot of things happen online. It's like getting ready, 9%, 17%. It happens very quickly. And this is related to that enablement package language that they used earlier. Remember, they're basically just flipping a switch. There are features that are kind of hidden in the code that this thing basically enables. In this current state, you don't necessarily get all of the features because they do that kind of, I'm going to call it A/B testing. I know it's not technically, but they don't enable all the features for everybody all the time, which I think is a stupid thing to do, period. But it's a stupid thing to do this close to release. But on both of the PCs I've installed this on, I do not have Windows Copilot, although I have it on a third computer in a virtual machine that I did from 2 months ago or whatever. There are methods to make that thing appear. There's a tool called Vive Tool, which used with certain parameters, command line tool, you reboot and it's supposed to work. That's how I got it working. I think it was back in June. I haven't been able, it has not worked for me so far. I'm going to keep trying different things, but I would like to see, that. I think that's going to be the kind of the marquee feature, which is too bad because it's not that exciting. There's some stuff that was released. There were dev and beta channel builds last week that have some of the features that will be in 23H2. So if you see anything in beta, that's coming in 23H2. So for example, they announced a build, I think it was, that in addition to zip file support in Windows, which has been in the shell since probably Windows 8, native support for RAR and other archiving formats, 7Z, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of cool.
What, you mean I don't have to pay?
Right. Yeah. There's a never combine mode for the taskbar, which dates back to, probably Windows, some version of XP or something. It's been there for a long, long time. Certainly Windows 7 at least, but a long time. Bringing that one back. Rich thumbnail previews and start. I, by the way, can't get any of this stuff to work in my build.
How do you get rich in a thumbnail? I don't understand. Oh, you mean
so that's an ordinary thumbnail?
Right. Well, so it's a what it is a it's funny the behavior here has changed. The way I take it to mean is you hover over something for which there is a thumbnail preview, like an image is an obvious example, and it pops up around the mouse cursor, kind of like happens in the Mac. On the Mac, the Mac, you might have to do like a little Command I or something. I don't remember what the exact thing is. I think if you single click, maybe it does that. Whatever it is. I was not seeing that before. Instead, what I was seeing was a little flyout that was quite different from what there was before, which allowed you to go and open it with something else or go find where it was in the file system or whatever, wherever. I have rebooted since then because I've been trying to get Copilot working, and actually now that UI is gone. So I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
The snipping tool is updated through the store, but if you have a 23H2 build, you get the new snipping tool. Nothing major there, but when you do a snip that is an image, like a screen capture, there'll be a little button for Paint in the toolbar, so you can go edit it in Paint, which is just kind of 1 or 2 steps quicker than the old way. And then if it's a video, you can edit it in Clipchamp. Those I do see, or still, I should say. That's kind of neat. And then we'll see, because frankly, I was hoping, I should say, no, sorry. One of the biggest thing perhaps, and this is something I noticed. This is the type of thing Mary Jo would never have noticed, is File Explorer has been partially rewritten with the Windows App SDK, right? So it's kind of a weird hybrid app where the top of it, and I think the navigation pane, or parts of it, actually, I'm looking, honestly, the main view might be as well, but it has been rewritten. And I'm going to turn some features on here so I can actually show you what it says. Yeah, so it has an almost like tile looking UI where each of the folders under quick access is kind of like a bigger thing. The font sizes and icons are all bigger. The toolbar is bigger and it's taller. So it's just been kind of, it's almost frankly a little thumb friendly, which I'm not necessarily happy about. And then there's a new gallery node, which I feel is horribly misplaced, but if you look at File Explorer today, or if you're familiar with it, you might know there are 3 sections. The top section is just the home view, and if you have OneDrive installed, or even if you have 2 or 3 OneDrives, they'll appear up there at the top. The bottom is this PC and network, and you can add other things to it, libraries and folders and things. And then the middle is all your quick access pins. So desktop downloads, pictures, documents, whatever it is by default, you can customize that, which I do pretty heavily. The gallery's in the top. It's between home and OneDrive for some reason. And it is literally the gallery view from the Photos app. So it's kind of a automatic layout of all the images on your computer by date. And you can scroll down. And of course, because you have OneDrive integration, in my case, I can go back past 1990. I don't know how far it goes. I can only see 1990 on the screen, but you can scroll through and get all your, you can see everything. And it just seems like it's in a weird place. Like, I don't know quite what the point of this is, but it literally is the exact view that you get in the Photos app. So I've gone back to some random year and I'm seeing pictures of buildings in Europe. I don't know what this is. Anyway, it's just, it's a weird thing I think it's a weird thing to have there in File Explorer, but I don't know what the alternative would be, I guess. I don't know, maybe a subnode of pictures or something, but I don't know. It's okay. I don't know that I don't see any way to get rid of it. I'm sure there's a control in there somewhere.
That is the challenge, right? Like I'm trying to hunt down that pop-up for the Xbox
right.
game bar, because it rings sounds even though all sounds are turned off. It doesn't kick an app. Like, it's just this voodoo bar that appears every so often. It's like, hey, listen, go away.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure this will be exciting to some people. So this is an ongoing thing. I'm going to keep trying on the Copilot, obviously. I wanted to do this in Mexico, but I'm going to do an episode about that for, hands on Windows, of course, et cetera, whatever. So, and then if you are in the dev channel, you've got a couple of those features that are also in beta. And they're working on a new flyout for Cast. This is the Miracast style Chromecast thing. So I think it's let's see, what is it? I should know this. What is Cast? It's not P. Oh wait, I can get to it from P. I think P is Project. It's what is it? Windows key plus C is now Copilot. That used to be Chat. What is Cast? Oh, K. I bet it's K. Yeah, K. Because Cast. So Windows key plus K is Cast. So if you have a Miracast display anywhere in your house, a lot of smart displays or Miracast displays, they are changing the UI. I don't see it here because I'm on beta, but and apparently my TV's off, so I can't see it. But they're just making it a slightly nicer UI. Nothing major there. But at least there were some new builds. We didn't remember last week. By the time we had the show, there was only one build, and it was just mostly fixes and stuff. So there's been some developments there at least.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's most of the Windows 11 stuff. But we have a couple of sort of related things. Probably 3 weeks ago, we talked about Microsoft Edge for Business, which, contrary to the name, is not a new version of Edge just for business. It's actually just a usage mode. If you use Edge today and you have profiles for both work or school, I should say, but work and personal, you know that you can switch between those profiles in Edge using your user photo there. It gives you different windows. The work and school account has like a briefcase on it to kind of differentiate it. There's also a thing going on with Edge that is not everywhere in the world, but they're changing the UI with a new layout. And actually, let me just bring up Edge and see what it looks like on this computer. This one still has the old UI, which is amazing to me. The only way you're going to see, it's crazy that this still has the old UI. I updated all 7 Edge chapters in Windows 11 Field Guide back in, as long ago as March, but April, somewhere in there, and using the new UI, which is still not out in the world. This is crazy. But anyhow, the only way you'll see this now is if you actually sign into Windows and or Edge from the get-go using what's it called? Entra ID? Entra ID? Used to be Azure Active Directory is what Microsoft calls a work or school account. If you do see that, if you do that, you will get Edge for Business. And Edge for Business is just an evolution of that profiles system I was describing previously. If you sign in with a Microsoft account and then add a business account, like a Enter ID, whatever we want to call it, you will continue to use the old system where you have profiles. It's still 2 windows. They still kind of look the same. The second one, the business one, I guess the first one in the original scenario, has that briefcase thing on it, and there's some little styling up in the corner. In the future, they're going to allow organizations to brand this window so that it could have your company logo on it. There is it's a one-directional unidirectional capability for opening. You go to a work site on the personal version of Edge, and it will open in Edge for Business. You can, as a user, specify sites that will open either one. In the future, this will be a IT org policy-based thing where they can specify. That's coming soon, I guess. So it's really a lot of talking for something that is a very subtle difference from what's available today for everybody, frankly.
Yeah, I've got a couple of notes from some friends in the IT space. They're like, oh, look, Edge for Business is here. Now I have to explain it to all my users.
That's exactly what's happened because some people, it just rolled out, and I've already heard from people like, now I've gotten all these help desk tickets. How come there's a briefcase on this icon? What's going on? And it's like, well, you're signing with an AAD or whatever. And they just enabled it. They do a little bit of this. There's a little thing at the top that says, hey, it's not, it hopefully is clear to people that it's not like malware or something, but I guess it's not.
Then therein lies the question, right? Yeah. We're busy torturing these guys with different phishing exploits to see if they fall for any of that. So now they're suspicious of everything, and good on them. Maybe they'll graduate to getting their own tinfoil hat. They're getting close.
What Edge for Business is not, as I said, is a separate application. It's not like a cleaner version of Edge. It doesn't have all those stupid AI features or whatever. You still get all the crap. It really is just a way to basically visually, but not just visually, but to the user, visually separate work and home.
It's a profile.
It's a profile. If only we had a system for it already. Profiles. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
maybe you've opened Chrome and you have seen
yes,
profiles.
You might have seen profiles. I mean, Chrome would work the same way. I mean, in the Microsoft space with Edge to date, I would say as an individual, some people might have different personal profiles. You can do that. Mm-hmm. You can have 2 different Edge if you want to.
Sure.
You could have probably an arbitrary number, but most people, I think, probably use it for one work account, one consumer account or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I definitely split sort of the .NET Rocks run as account. So, there's very different search criteria, different topic areas. When you mash them together, it makes you sad. So I keep them separate.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'm never going to use this. I don't care. All right. So I just don't.
Don't care.
Just don't care. Microsoft is not going to say this, but it's very clear that they have stepped back big time from all of their mixed reality stuff. The one big exception, of course, is HoloLens, and even that specifically is kind of Army related. I mean, they're maintaining that brave face kind of deal.
They still sell HoloLens 2. They still have a set of customers that are using it. They're still happily collecting. It's roughly like $1,000 a month to support a HoloLens on Azure. They're making money, but I don't know that they're pushing anything out. They're waiting on hardware.
Right.
And it seems like the Army's willing to pay them to experiment with hardware. So they're letting that happen.
I don't remember the exact history of this, but I would say over the active lifetime of Windows 10, there were various initiatives with Windows or with mixed reality, Windows mixed reality. They've relied, as they do with PC, well, as they used to with PCs, on partners. Microsoft had never made their own mixed reality headset, which is kind of interesting. HP had a big one for a while. Samsung as well. Dell, Acer both had them back in the day. But as we kind of move forward in time, you were starting to see a quadrupling of resolution in each eye. And I think that was just HP and Samsung, I think, and probably HP most recently. There's no one working on this anymore, frankly, at Microsoft, basically, right?
I think there's like two. Like the team's been drastically cut. But it's interesting to see it open up.
Yeah.
Do you think
so?
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm not important.
No, they have something. That's okay. There's just the news is that there's something called the Mixed Reality Toolkit, which is an open source SDK that developers can use to create these apps. I don't know that a lot are. They have moved that to an independent organization on GitHub. Qualcomm and Magic Leap are joining Microsoft on the steering committee. That's kind of interesting. It suggests a possible future. And maybe this was always the right way to handle this. This is probably what I would call the smallest fiefdom inside of Windows Plus devices, right? You know, the guys that are just quiet because they don't want anyone to notice that they're still there. It's like,
they still have a job.
These guys are still drawing a check.
Nobody else does. Yeah. I would argue that it's also, while we're waiting on hardware, let's all collaborate on the software, because we can come to a common software suite that's just more opportunity. And
a common software suite that works across the various VR platforms, right? So, Windows Mixed Reality is probably not going anywhere, but there is Meta and other companies.
Yeah, there's this company down in Cupertino, I think.
Well, no. That they would not factor into these plans. This is. We're going to need we're going to
ignore that completely.
No. Apple would just not allow them in, right?
No, that's not how Apple does things.
Well, I almost feel like they're getting together so that they have a united front against a behemoth entering,
which is never going to work. So the future of this will be a Xamarin / Flutter something that does to XR, whatever you want to call this whole market. What those things did to mobile app development, right? Sure. That Apple does not want these bastardized Meta ports, coming to their beautiful, clean platform.
Yeah. But
eventually,
garden.
Yeah, but
I was not insinuating that.
No, but I see the play of the MRTK very much the same way that the Chromium and the IE and Edge guys got together to push forward the standards on HTML5 to the point where even Safari had to eventually comply. Like, nobody wants to be the new IE6. Okay. So you make your way, and this is, I'm not saying they're there yet.
Yeah, but they're not.
if you were going to head in that direction, this would be one of
that does seem to be the plan. They already have experimental support for these other platforms. This is going to be a case like Xamarin. Xamarin's a good example, because Xamarin back in the day supported Windows Phone as well as Android and iOS. Today, .NET MAUI supports Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS, and I guess ties it. But the Windows thing is kind of gone, and so Windows Phone thing. This is we've looked at this market and said, well, we had a Windows thing, but now we don't, and maybe it's time for this thing to survive, to be more of a broadly compatible thing. So
and hope, and with any luck, improve enough that if and when they decide they're going to make new hardware, they'll have something to run on it.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So they don't have to roll themselves.
The right once run everywhere dream is true of XR, VR, whatever you want to call this, as it is of mobile, as it was of desktop back in the day. It's it's
right once run maybe.
Yeah. Right once run poorly everywhere. So we'll see. But that's
I've told you that we did this on the show years ago, the thing called the drawer of broken dreams, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Where you start with your phone and you make it work on your phone. Right. And once it's working on your phone, you go to the drawer of broken dreams, you get the next phone. It doesn't quite render right. So you do some tweaks, you get it ready on that phone. Then you regress that back to your phone. Now it's working on two phones.
Sure. And then Apple updates their UI and nothing works. And round and round we go.
Well, we always talk about how many phones in the drawer of broken dreams. And at one point in the Android world, it was like 200.
I was going to say all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The drawer doesn't close anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a minor thing, but it's interesting. I feel like Microsoft is going to progressively step back from a lot of these initiatives that seemed really important at the time. And actually, I wrote this in the notes, AI is the new AR.
Right.
Right. Remember the thing we cared about all the time over there? Now we're doing this thing over here.
I mean, but let's get back to the point, which is that the cloud has been the thing. They've been doing well in it. Yep. And they needed the next thing, and they've been fishing around for a while.
See, I honestly, aside from all the obvious stuff, and these markets have nothing to do with each other, I would say this is going to be a weird sentence, but the advantage of AI for Microsoft is that it does require that back-end infrastructure, whereas with AR, it's like,
like they managed to make HoloLens consume a heck ton of Azure IoT, and I think for the most part, VR, AR experiences are always going to lean on the cloud because they're always leaning on connectivity.
But AI is, I mean, it's just intense.
Well,
it's a different level.
The sheer,
and that's that. And for Microsoft, that makes more sense. I mean, Microsoft can now cleanly argue we could have made it with AR, but you know what? AI is so much more valuable to us.
Well, and it's literally like GPT-4 is so huge, it's barrier to entry for anybody.
It barreled over these other things, which may have been important otherwise, but now are superfluous to us. And that's not really what happened, but it's okay.
Part of the mission was to consume more cloud, and they did that.
Yeah. It sure feels like, though, in the tech world that they got all excited about AR, VR, mixed reality. Then they got all excited about Bitcoin. Now they're all excited about AI.
Yes. Yep. This all goes back to the paperless office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Paperless office, tablets.
Yep. Oh my God. Tablets twice.
Just because people get excited about it doesn't mean there's a market.
No. At some point, you realize people just get excited about anything.
Well, they're all looking for the next thing, right? And they're the next big thing, and they're trying to
look. If you're a venture fund right now, and you're sitting on several $billion worth of money to invest, like you've got a problem,
right?
Like that's a lot of money to put somewhere.
That's true.
Yep. Hey, speaking of AI coming up. And Xbox coming up, and the back of the book with some brown liquor included. We're going to probably, you can watch for this, start using AI for our show notes. And at first, I was, yesterday we were talking about it, and they showed me some examples. I said, that's terrible. That looks like an AI wrote it. There's no point of view. It's just, it's bland. It's empty. There's no voice. And what we do is human driven. But it turns out, so Anthony Nielsen, who has really become our guru of AI, he's kind of amazing, wrote a new prompt, and I'm blown away. I thought, this is the best show notes we've ever had. So watch for this. It'll be slowly rolling out, but we're going to...
oh, boy. Okay.
We're going to use something called Claude. I don't know who that is, but...
Is it Jean-Claude?
Jean-Claude Guilly. I think it's called Claude. Am I right, Anthony? I think that's the name of it. And I'm blown away. I could show you.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I could show you what it did. It put emojis in. All he had to do was add the thread. Oh, and have a point of view. Tell us who's excited about it and what he said and all of that stuff. This is the
have a point of view.
Have a point of view. So I've been really negative on AI. I could see some real value to this. These are the show notes from yesterday's MacBreak Weekly. So what they do is they use an AI tool called Podium to transcribe it. Then they feed the transcription to Claude. I think that's his name. Okay. And this is what Claude wrote. On this week's info-packed MacBreak Weekly, Leo and guests dive into the latest Apple news and rumors, including whether you should disinfect your bacteria-ridden Apple Watch. The hosts say yes to good hygiene, but question this, quote, news.
But Apple says just upgrade to a new one every year.
I mean, don't worry about the content. I'm just, I think this is really interesting.
It reads well.
Like a human wrote
a summarizer.
Yeah. And it's putting in, cleans up cringy titles and descriptions of it. I mean, this is really interesting. Alex Lindsay plays with trippy ambisonic microphones for surround sound experiments, but can it enhance their show audio? I mean, AI wrote it, and all Anthony did was change the prompt just a little bit.
Sorry, interns.
Yeah, no. Well, if we had interns, I'd be using them. They're cheaper than AI. But we don't. We don't. All you interns leave the building.
Don't let the AI kick you on the way out.
He added to the prompt, try to include the hosts and guests' positions and the topics. That's the prompt. He added that to a longer prompt. And it did. It's blown me away. Anyway, so this has been always a problem with our network, is that we just don't have the manpower to do.
Sure.
The fancy show notes, and that takes a lot of energy, a lot of.
Not to mention having the same style across shows is kind of useful.
And it's not. That's part of the problem. It's very inconsistent. Some shows have elaborate.
Yeah, because everyone. I'm sure the way I do notes is different. From
thanks
the way
to
you,
we have good show notes for this show because you're writing them.
It's just me, my stupid style. I mean,
but how much work that is. Yeah.
Well, it's
a week's worth of.
He's pretty fast. He's pretty fast at it. I've been sitting there watching him while I put him
really?
In. Yeah.
Well, in that case, no. I think the day will come soon when we're going to have chapter markings and all sorts of stuff we've always wanted to do but couldn't do.
Yeah.
So AI is interesting. Anyway, we'll talk about AI in a moment.
Yeah, that's cool.
Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, you're listening to Windows Weekly. AI time. AI and developers.
I've been waiting on this news, so to speak. Go back in time, and it was Richard who said, "What was when I asked sort of rhetorically, what is the impetus for Microsoft to come out with this AI stuff so suddenly out of nowhere, seemingly, right? And you go with Bing and do the things they did." And Richard said, and I'll never forget this: they saw the 100 million monthly active users that OpenWeb had on not
60 days flat
ChatGPT. Yep. And yeah, yep. And Microsoft, I don't know if they said this during the February event, but in some of the collateral interviews or whatever that occurred at the time, someone from Microsoft said every % of usage share, they call it market share, by the way, market share is something else, but usage share, I'll call it correctly, is worth billions of dollars to them. So that even if, Google had like 90% share and Bing had like 3, but they went to 4 or 5, that would be worth billions of dollars a year. So it still made sense. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. But in the back of my mind, not in the back of my mind, in the front of my mouth, I have been saying, yeah, but it's Bing. It's still Bing. Bing, to me, is one of the most failed brands that Microsoft owns. It's horrible. Worse, Bing is a terrible product. And yeah, okay, we're going to add AI to Bing, and that's cute, but Google's going to add it to Google search. So that's the end of that. And actually it was Richard again. You believe you called it table stakes. Now AI it's not even a thing anymore. It's just a feature of everything. It's like, it's not its own product. It's not its own wave. It's not its own service or whatever. It's a part of everything. Mm-hmm. And in that world, which I do believe is correct, Bing is still Bing. And if Bing doesn't have a differentiator, it's still Bing, and Bing stinks. So I've been waiting.
It became pretty. I did take it out for a spin, and I liked the footnoting that it did. I liked those were good features. Like,
yep. Listen,
except for that part where it didn't search out the stuff that mattered to me, it was really great.
I'm not going to get the date right on this. It doesn't matter too much. But the thing that we now call Bing, I want to say started life as Windows Live Search or MSN Search, and it became it was MSN Search, Windows Live Search, Live Search, and then Bing. And I don't remember the timing on this, but there were various reinventions of this service. One of the things that Microsoft found early on, for example, was that people were looking for celebrities. And so they went to their image display thing, and they made it really nice for that kind of thing. And they got a little bump from that for a little while. Like, people liked the way that looked. Mm-hmm. Google, of course, just responded by fixing theirs. And, whatever, that was the end of that. But the one that I really, really remembered, I just don't remember what it was called at the time, whether it was Windows Live or MSN Search, was they called it the answer engine. And the idea was they literally promoted it this way. Instead of an endless page of blue links, you ask a question and we're going to give you the answer, right? We call that AI now, by the way. Mm-hmm.
It's so easy.
On what was the day of the week of Christmas last year, or something where there's like an answer, whatever it is. And it was a good idea, and it went nowhere because this thing has never done well at all. Well, we've gotten our first. This is not. I wouldn't call this like a fact in the sense it's just like broadly accepted, but there was an awesome report in the Wall Street Journal that looked at Bing usage share, cited 2 major analysts that look at these things, talked to a bunch of individual analysts, one of whom gave the greatest quote I have ever read in my life, which said, Bing is cute, but it's not a game changer. Nice. The basic deal, whether you're Stat Counter or Similar Web or whoever else, is that Bing usage share today is either flat, with what it was in January before they added this AI stuff, or is actually a little bit behind. So, or I should know, that's not right. I'm sorry. It's up briefly. Meanwhile, Chat GPT 4, right, exploded since it was released in November.
So its momentum seems to have come off somewhat too.
That's true, but compared to what's happened to Bing, it's still night and day.
Yeah.
Still night and day. And I'm going to look for this exact. And I pointed this out. I said this today with regards to the CMA and Microsoft and Ubisoft. You always want to look for the word exclusive when you see partnerships, And one of the problems with Microsoft investing $11 billion in OpenAI is that they don't have anything really all that exclusive there.
No.
There are deals that they do as big partners. Bing is the default search engine now for Chat GPT or whatever. But Chat GPT usage surpassed Bing usage during this time frame. Bing was launched 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think that includes the previous permutations. I have to look that one up. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong about that part of it. But and like I said earlier, the issue here is what I said it was up front when we're still doing our stages of grief trying to figure out AI stuff back in February, March, whatever that was, which was it's Bing. It's still going to be Bing, And
excuse me, but isn't that the whole point of doing the investment in OpenAI is that they want to also reap the rewards of the next thing? So it's almost an acknowledgement that Bing isn't the thing.
I actually think that Bing is holding back Microsoft's AI work, and that what they should have done is bought OpenAI and gone with that as the brand.
Because the money transfer from OpenAI is all towards Microsoft.
It's all Azure in the end anyway.
Yeah, even that $10 billion, it's Azure credits. Microsoft's looking at it.
And they do own 49% of it.
I'm sorry, this is not the important point. The important point is that Bing is a terrible brand and that they should have done something new. So the example I'll use is what they did with Microsoft Teams. Well, in other words, instead of going forward with Skype, they did Microsoft Teams. They created a new brand for that, right?
Oh, well, first they made Skype for Business.
I know.
Don't
but
forget Link.
No, you're right.
And Response Point.
There were probably others I'm forgetting. So there were many. Office Communications was one.
There were lots. Server. Yeah.
But Teams as a brand has succeeded. And these are things, it's hard to understand why, honestly, in some cases, but Teams, for whatever reason, is the most successful Microsoft platform in decades. It's the most successful, I'm going to call it an Office app since the original big three, right?
Yeah.
OneNote for a little while was sort of like the big thing, like back in 2000. But I mean, this thing is blowing OneNote out of the water as far as, popularity, usage, whatever. It is a force of nature.
Yeah. It's just trying to displace Outlook and is succeeding in certain sectors.
Which is, I don't think anyone could have foreseen. Yeah. So they couldn't have done that with a Skype branded product. So that time they got it right. I think moving forward with Microsoft already has a very tenuous relationship with consumers. Moving forward with something that just doesn't resonate at all. That sounds like literally like my father's Oldsmobile, Zune, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, there's also, discussions going on now. Is Microsoft competing with OpenAI? They are offering their own services.
They absolutely are.
And they have they own a huge chunk of it.
It's not using OpenAI though, when Microsoft does it?
No, they are using OpenAI to compete with OpenAI. In fact, Microsoft was caught.
So are they really competing?
They were actually caught. Microsoft salespeople were caught saying to potential corporate customers that you should go with us and not with OpenAI because ... managed environment, we've been doing this forever, whatever it is.
Right.
And the guys at OpenAI were like, excuse me.
Hello.
Like, what are you doing? I mean, you could make an argument, and Microsoft probably would, that some of their offerings are in some ways like a superset of what OpenAI does. But
honestly, I think Microsoft has a two-pronged strategy. They have consumer-facing products like Bing and Surface, which are okay. But really, and I know, and everybody knows, the real business is the cloud business, and they're going to make money whether it's OpenAI or Bing or whatever.
Okay. I hear you, and the biggest success of Microsoft over the past 20 years, honestly, has been this shift in its business away from that Windows centricity of the past to this new cloud centricity. No doubt about it. This is a business case study. But when Microsoft is looking at transforming its business in the wake of the, I'm going to call it web/online service/mobile thing that happened, where Apple and Google, especially, and Amazon actually, right, all became dominant parties in their own right. They had different business models that they could kind of try to emulate, and Microsoft tried to emulate all of them, right? They emulated AWS with Azure. They emulated Google with Live Search, whatever it's called today, Bing or whatever. They emulated Apple with any number of devices, some of which they still sell today in the form of Surface. Apple is the biggest company in the world, and they are almost 100% consumer-focused, device-based, blah, 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 whatever. So there is an argument to be made that there's a market there too, and that if Microsoft somehow could have its fingers on both sides of that pie, online and hardware, that it could be even bigger. Microsoft's the second biggest company in the world, right? I think it's hard when you have a good brand and are leading a company and you do have this history to sort of decide strategically, we're going to be infrastructure, even though
they're clearly doing both. I mean, the growth area for Apple now is the back end services. That's right. I think they envy Microsoft's cloud, and now you're hearing rumors they're trying to make their own large language model product. Like everybody's trying to get on everybody else's bandwagon. Nothing unusual here.
No, that's exactly right. I guess my point is only that.
The case. I don't think Apple's looking at Microsoft at all.
Well, I
think Apple's saying the services came about because Apple saw the slowdown in the sales of iPhone because it was so saturated, and they said, "Well, what do we do? How do we change from unit sales to ARPU, average revenue per user? We get them some services that they have to buy."
It's the same high level goal, more money per user per month.
And I don't think iCloud is running on. I mean, I guess Apple has some network operations centers, but it's running on Azure, isn't it? I don't think it's running on
I don't think it's running on Azure.
They'll never admit it, but it's not running on their cloud.
I think Apple might surprise people by being one of the biggest owners of data centers in the world. I mean,
they do. I know they do, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe because of music and apps and all that stuff.
I'm sure like 90% of it is device backups later.
Right.
But the point is, but
actually, I'm going to try to find out who services iCloud. It used to be a bundle of services.
I think it was
AWS,
that's right.
Azure,
but
maybe a little Google.
Apple's model is always drop the partners as quickly as possible. Do it yourself. And Apple will approaches things in a very Apple way.
I don't know if it's that way with Knox. And I'll tell you, Knox are really a burden on the bottom line.
I know, but Apple silicon-based data centers running as these things are like running on unicorn farts, like for free. Like they, this is definitely the vision. This is the company. Steve Jobs had the vision of putting a factory on the ocean so they could import salt from the sea and puke out computers on the other side. It was the stupidest idea.
He didn't do that,
no, yeah.
Somebody talked about it.
But Apple does things in their own Apple way. And Richard hit on I think, which is an important point, which is Apple. Apple is rumored to be working on their own LLMs. Apple is a company that does things behind the scenes for years and years and years. Sometimes they don't come out, like the Apple Car thing or whatever.
No, but that's right.
They tend to come to market. And we'll see if they're right about this VR stuff, but they tend to come to market when they think they have something that addresses a need that's better than what's out there in the world. And I actually do think they could do this with AI /
here's an interesting. In the iOS security guide in 2018, Apple disclosed it stored iCloud file data in both Amazon and Google's commercial cloud storage. They didn't mention Azure. Other third-party services may also be used. Apple's language says such as Google and Amazon. Previously, Apple had listed Azure. Now, this is 5 years ago, so it's just,
they're pretty secretive. I mean,
Apple's not going to tell you, and they certainly have big network operation centers.
But I can tell you when they will talk about it when they've don't no longer have that need, right? And I'm not saying that is going to happen, but that is a playbook. And honestly, the ARM IPO was announced the other day, and there's been a lot of regulatory revelations from that company about the spread of ARM through different ecosystems. Obviously, mobile, it's 99-something%. The figure in data center, maybe Leo remembers it or you do. It's it was lower than I thought. It was teens, I think, 14%, some number like that. And I'm thinking to myself, this has got to be the biggest opportunity for ARM-based anything. And Apple has, we'll talk at the end of the show about the new version of Parallels.
Yeah,
running Windows and ARM better in virtualization than we can on real PCs.
Yeah,
there is an argument against it, which is that Apple is already bought up every bit of capacity TSMC has. That they're the ones who make it, and they want. I think they want every one of those. I think they want every one of those for iPhones and Macs. I don't know if they want to start putting those in data centers. This is from 2021. Apple's spending on Google Cloud storage on track to soar 50%.
Sure.
This was
we talk about
a couple of years
how much
ago.
Google pays Apple for search.
Yeah.
8
exabytes of data stored on Google Cloud. 8 exabytes.
I think this is something that changes over time. We're only going to hear little cherry picked bits. When Apple says such as, they also could mean including Azure. We just don't want, this time we're not going to mention Azure.
Yeah,
and then 5 years will go by and they'll say such as Azure and AWS, but they're actually still using Google. Like this may be a competitive thing. Like
we don't know. That's right. And they don't have to reveal it, so they probably won't.
No, and they may well be building out. They have data centers all over the world already.
As of November 2021, Apple was Google's largest cloud storage customer.
Nice.
Wow, nice.
So that just might be a storage capacity issue, right? They might be front-ending to their own data centers.
That's fascinating. I mean, I've made the argument that Microsoft could win in gaming by just being infrastructure thanks to Azure, right?
Yeah.
Right before the pandemic, Sony and Microsoft announced, which is a bizarre thing given how things have gone since then, announced that Sony was working on a game, cloud gaming platform of some kind, and they were going to run it on Azure. Now, I don't know what's come of that, but there's an interesting case where the future of PlayStation at the time might have been this cloud thing, and Microsoft would have lost, with Xbox, but they still kind of won because they're getting paid, this money. And so Google, which does much better in, search and advertising, frankly, but they do have a commercial cloud business that's, a small fraction of whatever Microsoft and Amazon have, but they can still win by losing in a way. Thank God there are all those iPhone users that need device backup and whatever else they're doing there, or just user storage right through iCloud, because that's propping up Google Cloud.
Isn't that ironic? The smallest of the big three.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with some folks who were talking about who gets to build cloud data centers.
Right.
Like how many companies can there be?
That's the thing. And we always talk about the obvious ones, but Apple is right there.
Because Apple has a worldwide workload. Like this is the main thing to justify this right now is you need to get footprint in all those locations. And you don't do it on a hope. You do it because you have work to do there. So the fact that you have a worldwide product with a demand level that's that you're paying a premium to other companies to support gives you an ROI to start building out those data centers, however small. And once you have the footprint in place, then you can grow it out with additional products.
So I would just say that with, I sort of forget how we got off on this topic. I think it was something about consumers / Bing, whatever, but you go back over 20 years, maybe more than 20 years, and you look at all the things Apple did over that time and all the times Microsoft poo-pooed it and all the times that the Apple thing surpassed whatever Microsoft had for consumers. It's not hard to imagine a future where, because I really do think Bing is a broken brand. It's a bad brand. It's not something
it needs a reboot.
Yep.
And I hope Satya has the nerve to do it because it used to be his brand.
Yeah. And God help them if Apple ever does come out with a consumer something in this space, because they were rumored to be working on a search engine at one point.
Yeah.
I could picture them.
They also made Mac servers for a while, and that didn't go well.
Yeah, that didn't go well. Yeah, that's true. So we'll see.
I have a policy on MacBreak Weekly. I don't cover patents because, there's actually a whole site called Patently Apple. That's every Apple patent. And they have a building entirely consumed by lawyers.
Sure.
Their one and only job, well, no, they have many jobs, but one of the jobs is to go to every single meeting, and sit in and say, yeah, we can pay.
Let's write
that down. We can
every time someone says it.
This is no different than Microsoft. Every developer is expected to, after each Sprint is expected to sit with lawyers and review for patents. Now, some of their projects are open source, but a lot of them aren't.
Doesn't mean that they're going to make products out of this stuff. This could be a brainstorming meeting.
This used to be
I'm very reluctant to report on patents because
remember IBM was the patent guy, the patent company.
Yeah.
Today it is Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, right?
Because times change, those patents get less useful as technology advances. And
plus, after they got tired of suing each other, they all cross-licensed, right?
Right.
It became
that's the other reason.
Mutually assured destruction.
It's defensive too, right? You create those patents as a defense.
And it's not but it's not defense against the incumbents. It's defense against new folks coming in.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
If you talk about a new tech company that's actually broken through the patent wall and is now part of that game, it's Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. All of those other tech companies are from the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. There hasn't been a company to become a big player in this space.
20 years ago today, there's a very good chance that Microsoft announced they were suing some Linux company for doing something patent something.
It's a cancer,
no doubt
don't you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Honestly, I think there's a big discussion to be had. Not on this show. We'll do it on another show. But there was a great article this week in the New Yorker by Ronan Farrow about Elon Musk and how basically Musk's SpaceX has taken over space exploration from the federal government, and actually it turns out that's a very lucrative position to be in, is to privatize stuff the government used to do.
I would also remind people that's the plot of the movie Alien. And,
yes.
Remember how that turned out.
But that's what's interesting about this is now the U.S. government's terrified that Elon's going to turn off connectivity to Ukraine because he keeps talking to Putin. And this is this weird position suddenly we're put in. Yep. And I honestly, that to me conjured up visions of this sci-fi future where corporations are the governments, frankly.
I'm next week I'm doing a talk on space in 2023. And so I just did the numbers on how big SpaceX actually is. And the number that stood out to me was that last quarter, Q2, they lifted over 200,000 metric tons into space.
Yeah.
The next largest was China at 23,000.
A tenth.
Yeah. Everybody else combined in the world isn't as much weight as what they lifted.
Yeah. But that's actually scary. And I think the other side of this conversation is, as companies like Microsoft, SpaceX, Apple, Amazon, Google become so big, I honestly feel like maybe this is foolish. That they've reached a point where they've reached critical mass. They're too big to fail, and they're too big for somebody to challenge.
Yeah.
And to me, this is a scary thought. I mean, we're dominated essentially by a half dozen companies.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not the case?
Yes. And it's all a question of what are they willing to do with the position that they're in.
In the old days, you could say, well, the business cycle, is a given, and at some point the sunset and the next guy will come along. I don't think I think they've broken that cycle now. They're so big, the next guy can't come along.
You're not the first who said that either.
I know, and I've said it in the past. Remember the patent officer who said everything that ever needed to be invented has been invented. We don't need in 1910.
So Bing, we were talking about Bing.
Bing. What's that all about?
What is this Bing you speak of?
I don't know. It's Bing.
Microsoft. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
I it's a big topic.
I think this is interesting.
I think I do too, actually. My point here is that Bing is not going to be how Microsoft succeeds with consumers.
No.
It just isn't.
And they don't even need to or care. Why would they care?
But they seem to care, and I'm a little freaked out by they were very indignant at this Wall Street Journal report. They claimed that these studies don't take into account all of the traffic they get through the app-based stuff they're doing and blah, 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 whatever. They talked about how Edge, which this almost has nothing to do with this, but Edge took share in this same time period, and it went from 4.9% to 5.27%. So exciting, I guess. I mean, I just don't understand why this was the push. Microsoft has a very strong and dominant position in what I'll call productivity, right? And a good position in the cloud. And I feel like they should have led with that stuff. I don't quite get bothering with the consumer stuff. They should have. I don't know. But we'll see. It could turn around. I could be wrong. I feel good about my position on this one, but you never know. Richard, I assume you heard the travel guide story.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Good one.
So if you visit Ottawa, Microsoft has used AI to write a travel guide, an MSN travel guide, that recommended visiting a Ottawa food bank with the tip as one of the top places to visit in Ottawa. Consider going into it on an empty stomach.
Nice.
Yeah. Like the poor and homeless people that have to eat there. And people have figured out where that language came from because obviously AI just pulls from everywhere. And there's a quote on the Ottawa Food Bank website that says, someone who works there probably says, people who come to us have families and jobs to keep with bills to pay. Life is challenging enough. Imagine facing it on an empty stomach.
Right.
So that turned into a travel tip from Microsoft to AI.
Oh, that's oops.
That's a bad one.
Oops.
Yep.
That's a bad look.
Got an empty stomach? Go to the food bank. You'll love it.
There you go.
5 stars.
I know. Oh, and if you are going to go to the food bank, make sure you don't eat before you get there.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely go with an open stomach. You want to fit in.
Oh,
that's
the worst. Terrible.
There's no version of this that's any good.
No, you're supposed to do that before you go to the buffet at the MGM Grand.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest, but okay.
I don't know. Buffets are just not a good
once
idea.
engaged in a steak eating contest in Vegas where we couldn't finish our steaks. And so we said the next day we're not going to eat until we go back. And then we went back and we ate the whole steaks and we finished it. And then we said, what the hell did we just do? I'm going to be sick for 2 days.
What's the point? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Nobody wins this contest. We both lost. It was stupid. And then in the context of
the only way to win is not to play.
Is to not play. There you go. Which AI could have told me. Table stakes, AI, etc. So Brave is my preferred web browser, as I always beat that one to death. They are usually a little slow on the new feature stuff, right?
Right.
And I kind of like that. But Brave announced that they are adding, Leo, you'll enjoy this name. They're adding an AI companion to the browser, a native AI companion called Leo. Right?
Is it called Leo?
It's called Leo. It's called Leo because of because Lion and the Brave,
right.
Wizard of Oz.
So those all go together.
Sorry.
So
they're using the open-ish Meta Llama 2 source available large language model with a special focus on safety and privacy.
Llama 2 is getting a lot of love, It's nice to see something other than OpenAI.
Yep. And it's not available in any of the mainstream versions of Brave yet. It's in the nightly builds if you want to do that. So it's coming in the future. It does not currently have access to live information, but that's going to change over time. Obviously, Brave has their own search engine. But in keeping with the whole point of Brave, they're not, it's private. They're not saving any chats. They're not using any chats for training purposes. You can't even review your own chats because they're discarded immediately. They're not stored on Brave servers. There's no way to review past conversations or delete data because there is no data, et cetera, et cetera. So they're doing all the stuff you would expect Brave to do. It's kind of a Brave centric way of handling AI in a browser. So that makes sense. I will say I don't use Brave Search, and I doubt I'll use this, but anyway, it's coming. That's fine. I was hoping to give you guys a detailed report of Project IDX, the Visual Studio Code-based web editor from Google. I was invited in to join. I cannot get it to work, but it works long enough that I can see its Visual Studio in a browser. And every time I try to start up a project, which I believe spins up a VM, it crashes. So typical Google product for now, but I'm sure it'll be fine. In fact, I bet I tested it tonight. It's fine. I was hoping to write about it and kind of look at it and see what it was like. But the thing I did see was there are project types up front. Let me actually, do I still have it in the browser? No. There are project types up front for Flutter, web. Is that it? That might be it for now. And then you can start your own blank project. You can import projects from GitHub, as you would expect. It's probably going to be okay. That's that.
All right.
Yeah, I'll move along from that.
You don't want to talk about IDX?
That is it. I'm sorry. That's the name of it.
Okay.
That was IDX. Sorry. Yep. That's the
curious I immediately thought it was Midori.
No,
what's old is new.
I mentioned to Laurent today, I'm like, hey, I got into IDX. And then like he usually writes back and I could see it like it is waited. And he goes, I had to look that up. I was like, fair enough. That's okay. So moving on to Xbox, Microsoft announced this week, I believe, that they will be closing the Xbox 360 store on July 29, 2024.
Oh, no.
So a bit under a year.
What will I do with my 360?
Of course, the natural reaction to that sentence is, wait, they still have an Xbox 360 store? This is a console that came out in 2005. It was replaced by the Xbox One in 2011, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, this thing's still open. And so you can buy Xbox 360 content, including games and add-ons and blah, 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 whatever. Everything you bought will still work after that date. So all of your games and content, you'll be able to do multiplayer.
Your machine doesn't burst into flames.
Yep. No, that was something Kevin Matrick wanted to do. You can continue playing multiplayer, et cetera.
Kevin Matrick or Don Matrick?
Yeah, Don Matrick. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Sorry, Don Matrick. I have a Don Matrick video to discuss soon. I do. Blah blah blah. Xbox, backward compatible games on Xbox One and Series X and S will always be available, etc. So, honestly, that's impressive that this thing's been around. This is 18. This will be 19 years. By the time
I don't know why they didn't just wait for a nice round 20.
I know,
but still, I mean, at 20 years old. When do the traces start falling off the circuit boards? Like I've had stuff just disintegrate that got out.
Those things were falling apart 2 years in from the Red Ring of Death. I mean,
they were burning themselves up. Like
I don't know, maybe because they were all refurbished.
Yeah, that's the real question. How many 360s are actually running?
Well, okay, OG 360s probably not too many, but honestly, there was the S and was the last one called the U, the cost reduced smaller versions.
Mm-hmm. And those are pretty durable. They got the power management right.
Yeah, they're probably I don't know how many, but I mean, that was the most successful Xbox of all time, by the way. Roughly neck and neck with the PS3 at the time, 82 million units sold. Unbelievable. They still both got killed by the Nintendo Wii. That was just a sad fact of circumstance, but
the last release was 2013 and it was the E.
2013, excuse me. The E. Okay, the E. I'm sorry, not the U. Yeah. So 2013 was when I believe that one was styled like the Xbox One, sort of. So maybe
it's because the black styling and so forth. So
2013, yeah.
I mean, and even then, it's like, okay, that's 10 years old. That was 10 years old in June.
Yep.
Come on.
There were it
still had the composite video connectors on it, for crying out loud.
Yeah, but they were smart to do that plug-in thing so they could change that. And the other thing they changed was when it first came out, it was 720p and it became 1080i over time. And if I'm not mistaken, I think 1080p as well. They actually somehow managed to, I think, but at least 1080i.
You can't beat the new Atari 2600.
We're going to talk about it. Are we? Yeah.
Are you? Is it?
You can beat it, but we'll talk about that.
Okay. Should you beat it? That's the question.
Well, yeah, you should actually. This thing could have been better than it is. Age of Empires 4 is out. It is on Xbox. So an Age of Empires game on Xbox.
Love Age of Empires. I saw that.
You played on the PC.
I almost bought it, and then I thought, what am I going to do with a controller in this game?
Yeah. Well, it's been optimized for that. I don't know what that means. I'm not going to try it.
It means a carefully tuned inferior playing experience. Well done.
It really is a point and click game. I don't know how you do it with a controller. It's just not. Hey, I love Age of Empires, but
2000 to 2003, 4 timeframe, I did not think it would be possible to do third-person shooters effectively in a console with a hand controller. And
that's
GoldenEye, et cetera.
Changed.
That's just. I bet that's the majority of it now.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, anything you never know. Don't count the console out. PC Game Pass, that was part of Microsoft's antitrust related promises during the whole Activision Blizzard thing. Wait, that's not over yet. Just kidding. Anyway, it's actually going live tomorrow on GeForce Now. So that was one of the announcements. I don't remember the exact date when they first announced that, maybe months ago. But for at least 10 years, Microsoft has this deal with NVIDIA to make its PC Game Pass games available on rival services, including NVIDIA. So that's happening starting tomorrow because it's a PC. Support 4K resolution, 120 frames per second. Unlike the Xbox Series X, am I right? Anybody? No.
And I have GeForce Now playing on that NVIDIA Shield, which has that nice Tegra processor. Does upscale. And that's a pretty good platform for gaming.
And that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
I've had that one pitched to me a few times. It's quite a nice device.
Yep. So that's interesting. And I'm not going to do that, but that's interesting.
You're skipping over the PlayStation. You're skipping that over.
No.
And the 2600.
I meant I'm not going to do PC Game Pass on NVIDIA.
NVIDIA. Yeah.
I'm pretty much going to pay Microsoft and no one else. Some couple of months ago, Sony announced what looked like a gaming handheld. I guess it technically is, but it's called the Portal Remote Player, which is a terrible name. It's basically a little tablet with two halves of a PlayStation 5 controller on it.
It looks like a Switch.
Yeah, it does.
Well, guess what?
The thing is,
that's exactly what they're aiming.
Well, except it streams games, and it streams games not over the internet, but from your PlayStation.
Oh, it's just an Android device.
That'll be great on an airplane. Oh boy!
Wait a minute, Paul Thurrott has a free gift for me.
Do I?
I like the way I like the X that you chose. It looks a little familiar. I don't know.
I'll
get that free gift later. I promise, Paul.
Well, you'll have to wait a month because it only comes up once a month.
Oh, so, what?
Well, because we don't want to spam people.
Right.
It's going to be $199. It's going to launch later this year, to be vague.
Why? What is this?
Sony used to make handheld gaming machines, right? The PSP. Right. And then the second one, what's the second one called? The
PSP was great. I had that.
Yeah, but what was the sequel
portable?
to it? No, but there was they call it something else, but it was a PSP basically. So the problem with the first PSP, from my perspective, as a first person shooter fan, was it only had one D-pad. And you need two for like we have on controllers. Right. So the second version, I can't remember the name, someone will know in the chat, had two. And I was like, there we go. We have now a portable gaming system I can play Call of Duty on. And there was a version of Call of Duty on the whatever that thing was called. And then they got rid of it. And now they're coming out with this. It's like, seriously? This is what we're doing? I wish they had. I never understood. Sony, like Nintendo, like Microsoft actually now, has a vast library of games from what we'll now call legacy consoles that would play very effectively on a handheld device. Vita, thank you. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, IRC. Thank you.
Two D-pads, right? So I don't. I mean, this thing does too, right? If you look at it, they have the D-pad on either side. It's fine. Not D-pad. I'm sorry, thumbsticks. Sorry, thumbsticks. Sorry, it had a low profile thumbstick. It looked like a D-pad, not a D-pad. Sorry. Anyway, this is just a little. This is like we have these ways to remotely, like in other words, you have an Xbox or a PC or a PlayStation, and there are different ways you can kind of remote the thing that's installed on it or whatever and put it on some other device. We have different ways to do this. This is another way to do this. And I wish it was more than this. I'd like to see them be a little more aggressive.
I'm just kind of stunned that they said they discontinued the Vita in 2019.
Yeah.
You'd think the moment you had that come out of your words, you show off the new device. Like it's been 4 years. And then it's kind of really underwhelming. Like the only thing I could think of is that the Twitch blew them out of the water and they're like, well, we got to rethink this. And their answer was, well, let's just make something really crappy from the get-go.
Yeah, but Rayman,
I don't.
Vita.
You're only going to play this in your house.
This is all right. So you know
with
what this
your
is?
PS5. Like is that the only way to play
this is an example of when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So Sony has been successful in consoles. I don't think Sony, like Nintendo, has given any effort at all to mobile, and I think that's stupid on both their parts. I think they both, and Microsoft, same thing.
But remember,
I don't understand.
Sony makes an Android phone, and I bet you anything, the guts of that phone, the Xperia, or what's in
that device.
It will be as used by as few people as those Sony's phones, which it's just this is stupid. So it's too bad. I'd like to see them make a dedicated portable, something that actually did take on the Switch, right? I think there's a market for this.
Well, gee, you ask Nintendo. Like, it's totally overwhelmed their whole business. Like that has become the business. They used to sell consoles. Now they just and nobody cares about anything but the Switch. Coming out of the Wii U, I get it.
I'm going to guess.
They have a service that would make it viable.
A lot of the people who have Switches also have either a PS5 or an Xbox.
That's right.
Right.
And that will probably always be true because the games are so different. Right?
Yeah, and it's relatively inexpensive, and it's portable, and you take it with you. And the games are designed for it, which is not the case of the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So this kind of brings us to that 2600 plus thing. So Atari, which from what I can tell is like a crypto shell game company right now, has been trying to do something hardware for a little while, right? They had that VCS console, the new one that hasn't really gone anywhere. I've been writing a lot about tech nostalgia recently, so this is kind of coincidental. It is very easy to emulate Atari 2600 stuff today, anything from the 80s, right? The games are all like 4K, 8K, through, maybe the big ones. Like
that's the funny thing. It's not an 8502 processor. It's a more modern processor emulating an Atari.
That's where I think they may be. My guess is Atari has, if you go and look at the Atari site, they've been doing this thing where they're releasing special edition versions of some of the early Atari cartridges, which I'm sure you know all about. So this console comes with a cartridge that has 10 games on it, 10 classic games. I would say it's like 3 or 4 good games and whatever the crap is. But I'm guessing that their goal here is to sell more of these cartridges. Where
it works with your old cartridges. Apparently, it's completely compatible.
But who wants cartridges? Why would anyone want cartridges with this thing? Look.
All the games should be built in and maybe a cloud service.
Get a Raspberry Pi. Yeah. Get an SD card. Download every single 2600 game ever announced.
Of course you can do that. But that's not the point. This is nostalgia.
In a USB key. So it should come. It needs to come with a pencil eraser then too, so you can clean the bits.
Yes, exactly.
It should have like an SD slot on the side to let you do that. Yeah. Then I would be like, okay, $129.
What? It should just have an Ethernet jack on it, and it plugs into a cloud service. And which 2600 game would you like to play? $10 a month.
I don't feel like they understand what they're doing. I just don't get it.
I think you're wrong. I think this will sell like hotcakes. In fact, it'll probably be sold out within a few days.
Oh, you know what? And you're totally right. And then they'll play it once, and then it'll sit on a shelf.
Yeah, it's a nostalgia play. People want their old 2600.
Well, but
it has an HDMI port, so you can do it with your modern TV.
No,
it's even got the crappy joystick that breaks after 20 games.
Here's the thing. So we forget this, but back in April, I think it was April. Yep. Atari announced that they had acquired over 100 classic Accolade, Infogrames, and Microprose games from the 1980s and 90s, along with the trademarks for for 2 of those brands, Accolade and GTI. And it was, so it's hundreds of games, classic titles. Some of them are amazing, right? And what are they going to do with this? So at the time, they did admit that they were changing their strategy, and that a big part of it was reinventing old classics, reimagining storylines, and developing entirely new narratives inspired by the games that set the course for an entire industry. So this Atari 2600 Plus to me seems like a holding pattern, because it has nothing to do with what I just said. It is about nostalgia, like you said, and it will probably raise some money. It was probably the cheapest thing in the world to make, right? They own the rights to the look and feel.
The plastic wood trim.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it looks a lot like the original console.
Is, basically. It's a little smaller.
So they bought up the rights to all these games. They put them in bundles of 10 with 3 good games and 7 terrible ones.
Yeah.
And they sell the cartridges for $80 a shot.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like the cable TV industry.
I mean, I can buy on Xbox, I don't know how many, is it 500 Atari? There's a huge Atari game bundle on the Xbox.
Yep.
So, I mean, if all I wanted was the games, it's very easy to play those games still.
Right. Yeah. Yep. For sure. So we'll see. I mean, and the company that bought the rights to the Intellivision stuff, which was
by the way, these are not bad games. Adventure, Combat, Dodge 'em, Haunted House, Maze Craze, Missile Command, Real Sports Volleyball, never mind. Surround, never mind. Video Pinball, Yar's Revenge, So there's some classics on here. They didn't completely garbageware it.
You can download every one of these games for free right now.
I know. Everybody knows that. Flat. Anybody who buys this knows that. Yes. Of course.
I don't know. You can go on Amazon right now and buy an original Atari 2600 if you wanted, or a 7800, and just get both sets of games that way. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like we're just regurgitating the same thing over and over again. Except this is an emulator. It's not even the real thing.
Why is there a company called Atari? I mean, honestly, it's a nostalgia thing.
Sure.
Yeah, and you've got all the folks that are making the giant open emus, like literally an arcade cabinet, and it's like, what game set would you like to play?
Yeah, we had that. We used to have one in the Brickhouse. We gave it to a fan because we didn't want to take it with us. So Berserk is $29.99.
Yeah, right. Come on.
Wow.
Stop.
Wow.
The right answer there is Berserk and 1,000 other games is $29.99.
I mean, honestly, take it from me, because that was my first game machine.
They're being pretty hopeful here.
These aren't great games, and you play them, and you go, yeah. So play them on emulation, and you'll, $33.
Get the nostalgia out of you, and then move on.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I've been writing about. Like, I literally, when I went into this series that I'm writing, I was like, I'm not going to write about this hardware stuff because I don't think anyone should buy these things.
Right. Yeah, no, they're going to be bought as gifts.
Yeah,
you're going to play with them on Christmas
Day. And it will be
Day.
something you put up on your shelf,
and you put it on your shelf.
Look, this was the best thing that ever happened to you when you were 8 years old, and you want to relive that 40 years later.
Yeah, but so was Kentucky Fried Chicken, and now it's awful, right?
Oh, I might disagree with that, but anyway.
Maybe in Mexico it's good.
Actually, it's terrible in Mexico.
Is it really? It's different?
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, there's no concept of like crispier original recipe and.
Do they have jalapeno flavored?
I don't remember. KFC. It was awful. I was so disappointed.
Do you want to? That completes our Xbox segment.
Yes,
so let me interrupt for a moment before we get to the back of the book. Your tip, your app, your brown liquor of the week, all coming up. The moments you've waited for, frankly, the whole show. I do want to use this opportunity just to briefly recommend Club Twit. We've had great success with this. Lisa started this 2 years ago. She was smart. She saw the adpocalypse coming, and it really has hit podcasting very hard. It's hit everything hard. If you're not Google or Facebook, you're a small fraction of the potential ad sales in the world. And since we are not Google and we are not Facebook, we aren't. We're struggling. I'll be honest with you. And we'd like to keep doing what we're doing. We'd like to bring back shows and start new ones. And the club's made that possible. So very much I think it's very much part of our future. It's critical, frankly, for our future. Now, I think we've done it right. Lisa did a lot of research. She said, we're only going to charge $7. I said, $7? People charging more than that for one show. We're offering them a bunch. She said, no, $7. Here's what you get for your $7. I think it's a very good deal. Ad-free versions of all the shows. Ad-free and tracker-free. So you get your, everything like this show free of ads. You also get shows that we don't put out in public. Paul was talking earlier about his Hands on Windows show. We put a few of those out as a little teaser, but how many have you done, Paul? There's like 40 or something. So
no, it's over 50. It's I don't remember exactly.
Tons.
Because we started in July last year, so it's 50 to 60.
You've been doing more than a year. So and those are fantastic. There's Hands on Macintosh with Micah. We brought back Home Theater Geeks. That was a show we had to cancel because there wasn't any support for it. But the club members support it, and so we brought it back. So Scott Wilkinson's doing that. We're starting the AI show now. That's going to be Jason Howell, Jeff Jarvis want to do that. We've been prototyping it in the club. We do special events. Yesterday, Dan Patterson was on. Dan from Twit. He was a CBS reporter. He's worked in war zones. Fascinating stories with Jason Howell yesterday. Those are club events. We've got a lot of them coming up, a photo walk at the end of the month and so forth. You get access to the Club Twit Discord, which we were talking about earlier. We've reorganized quite a bit, but it is a fantastic social network. It's my favorite because it's quality people. It's Twit listeners. And it's the most dedicated Twit listeners, the ones who care enough to spend $7 a month. And that's great. There are now almost 4,000 members in the Discord. I think there are more than that for the club. But that's still less than 1% of total audience. And I would love to get it to 5%, 10%. If we got to 10%, we probably would just stop doing ads entirely. They may stop anyway. That's the real point. I don't want to overburden you with a big, long pitch. Just visit twit.tv/clubtwit. Look at the benefits, and please consider joining. There's family memberships, there's corporate memberships as well. It is big for us. And I will tell you this. I do not take a penny of it. None of that goes in my pocket. And I know that because I haven't been paid for 3 months. But Paul has, Richard has, the hosts, the engineers, the lighting bills, all of that get paid thanks to you, Club Twit members. You have my eternal gratitude. And if you'd like to join that club, We'd love to have you. twit.tv/clubtwit. Back to the program at hand. And Paul, you have a tip of the week.
Yeah. This is that's not self-serving. You're going to love this. So
I love it.
Every couple of years,
I love it already.
I go through some sort of a decluttering routine that involves like the digital stuff, right? So I have all these like scanned photos that are all loose and unsorted and blah, 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 whatever. So I picked, since we got back from Mexico, I've been working on all that stuff. So I went I somehow in 2 weeks went through all of our unsorted scanned photos and filed them away properly, like they're in the right places and all that stuff. So then I turned to my document archives, which is horrific. So I have stuff in OneDrive, which, I only have a terabyte of storage there. I have 6 terabytes of mirrored storage in my NAS, and it's, my God, I have so much stuff. And I've already picked out some just real gems of stuff that wasn't anywhere else. I found some photos of people that I never even knew existed. There's been all kinds of neat stuff in there, but a lot of it is my work archive stuff. So part of it has been organizing it and blah, 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 whatever. But one of the things you do as part of this process is you bring stuff down onto a PC so it's local and easy to work with. And you look at it and you're like, what's taking up all the space? So in my work archives, which literally date back to 1993 and go all the way through 2000, well, they go to today actually, but this part of the archive, what I think of as the Penton part of it, which goes through 2000, well, technically 2015, but 2012 in the folder structure, was 116 gigabytes.
Whoa.
And I'm like, that's, the other parts of it, which were just Word documents, was like 1 gigabyte, even though it was like the same amount of stuff. So I'm like, something's taking up space. What could that be? Well, MOV files, MP4s, all kinds of video files, bitmaps, which are really big, compared to like JPEGs or whatever. And so I started going through it. And what I realized, I wasn't surprised. I also, you could see like folders like Windows Phone, Zune, Xbox, Office, et cetera, server, dev, whatever. The 3 big ones were Windows Phone, and Xbox. And I thought, actually, Xbox might have been number 2. And I thought, well, I know why that is. There's going to be a bunch of video crap in there. And so I went through that, and sure enough, and I whittled this thing down to 48 gigabytes, pulled out not all of the videos, but all the biggest video, the big ones, the ones that really matter. And then I went through them, and I thought, I have a lot of internal Microsoft videos. I've got a lot of Microsoft promotional videos. I've got a lot of little product run-throughs that I did, like the Xbox UI. We would talk about the Xbox 360. I have at least 3 versions of those UIs where I just click through the UI and you can just see it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to put these on YouTube because I won't have to store them. It's free. And I can still reference them easily enough. And so I've been doing that. Now it takes a while to upload. It doesn't actually take that long to upload. It takes a while. You got to write a little description. You want it to be right. So it's not in any order. I'm going to play with playlists and do things better.
Lord, look at this.
I went straight to the one that says Microsoft delays Longhorn because I remember this.
Yeah. There's already some good stuff in it. There will be lots more. Wow.
Steve Ballmer talks Dynamics CRM.
That's a dynamic one. Let me tell you. Steve Ballmer reads off of a screen. But still, these are slices of history. The one that's kind of fun that one you click on. What's in a name is how they named Longhorn Server. It's a humorous video. It basically involves them going through different ideas. Supposedly, is Ian McDonald, right? Remember him?
Yep.
And if you skip to the end, they get to how they named it. So it's a joke, but it's actually pretty funny. Because you remember the previous version of the server was called Windows Server 2003. So he just added he's like, we'll call it Windows 2008. That was, it's a cute one. There's lots of names.
So this was an internal.
Yeah, I think that might have showed it.
It's like a slideshow, though. It's not even
a server.
Just making fun of themselves.
Yeah.
It's meant to be fun. Yeah.
We know they really named it Longhorn because of the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's just a fun little.
It's cute. Alex. It's so cute.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of good stuff.
Dude.
So today, that YouTube channel it's sort of my personal channel. It's like Paul Thurrott or whatever. But I'm going to read right now. The Thurrott name in YouTube is on my Gmail account for some stupid reason. So I'm going to swap those, and it will just be like YouTube/@Thurrott. And then we'll. Just
right now, it's at Paul-Thurrott if you want to jump to it.
Yeah.
But
yep. Yeah, but this, and
like there's more coming, right?
I've only uploaded maybe 60 of them. There's a lot more.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot. So
holy moly.
There were a lot of the videos I just deleted. They were just like Microsoft or some game maker has it was like a preview of a game. So it was like a 1-minute video showing gameplay.
Yeah.
Often in HD or 4K even. It's just a waste of space. Like there's no reason. I'm not going to repost.
Oh, you definitely need like a Vista collection here.
Oh, there'll be Longhorn and Vista, and I'm going to break it down. Yep.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah, so it's some neat stuff. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's good.
Love this.
Yeah, so I think people who watch this are going to want to see this. So useful.
Thank you,
and then
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm just, this is all. And then I'm going to lose the desire to do this at some point, and then I'll put it off for another year. But I'm right in the middle of doing all that decluttering stuff. So
love it that you're saving it is really great.
Caught up in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it now. So there's that. Parallels Desktop 19 came out this week. This is the virtualization solution for the Apple Silicon Macs that allows you to run Windows on ARM on a Mac. And yes, I can confirm that it still runs faster in virtualization, even on a system with just 8 gigabytes of RAM, by the way.
Jeez.
Then I'm not kidding. Than a actual hardware Windows on ARM PC.
Wow.
That is depressing, and it's a fact. So there's no arguing that.
So maybe my new machine should be a MacBook Air with Parallels.
Well,
actually, that's not a bad idea.
I mean, Parallels
if you wanted to run ARM anyway, the ARM version of Windows.
Yeah. I finally asked these guys. I'll talk about some of the features.
What do you give up though if you're running the ARM version? I mean, is it not?
Well, that's the thing. So what's the point of this? Like, why would someone do this? Right? It's always that one app thing, right? Or some organization maybe, or some person has that one Windows app, or maybe a small handful of Windows apps, whatever it might be. In that case, I honestly, by the way, I know this for a fact now. No, most people don't do this. As it turns out, most people are not that sophisticated. But one of the cool things you can do with this product, and I think with VMware as well, is run what they call coherence mode, where you don't have a window with the Windows desktop, or you don't have it full screen, but rather you just go to the dock, or you go to search, whatever they call Sherlock now, whatever, type in Notepad or whatever, and it just runs as a window next to all your Mac apps, right? The Mac has also evolved from a UI sense where they have full screen apps that actually take up full screen, and Mac users are very used to doing the touchpad swipe thing, where they swipe between apps. And you could run, and I guess a lot of people just do use the Windows, like it's a Windows desktop, but they treat it like an app for the Mac. And they're probably just running an app, and it's running on the desktop, but it's in its own little space, and that you could do that too. I like coherence, yep, personally, but I guess most people actually don't use it. So there's different ways to do it. It's also big with developers, of course, for obvious reasons. Is this, I don't know, I don't know. I guess this is obviously it's for Mac users for a start, who have whatever need for occasionally accessing Windows. These could be students, they could be professionals, they could be developers, whatever. But I'm sure there's a million use cases, but it's not. No, would you as a Windows user buy a Mac to do this? No, probably not. I wouldn't recommend it, but I mean, you could. This version adds Touch ID support, which is not quite Windows Hello, but pretty close. Mm-hmm. What that means is that's another thing I learned. Most people, the way this thing installs by default, you don't actually sign into Windows. It creates a user account for you that mirrors your one on the Mac. There's no password associated with it. So this thing, when you need to fire up the VM, which by the way happens nearly instantly, it's infuriating. This thing boots in like 3 seconds. It just is there running in the background silently. You don't even know it unless you have it displayed as a window. So you just do your thing. However you search for an app, you run the app, it runs next to Mac apps. You don't even notice it. It's kind of incredible. But obviously, in some cases, you need to sign in with an Enter ID account or a Microsoft account or whatever it might be. And maybe you're using that environment more, and you want to auto sign into apps and do all that stuff. So if you go into settings and create a Microsoft account or or school account, or convert that account that they created for you to one of those things and reboot, first time you come up, they actually modify the sign-in screen in Windows 10 or 11 so that it says, enter your password once. And you have to authenticate just to create it. Obviously, the first time you create the account, you have to authenticate. But
right.
It says, enter your password once, and we'll add it to the keychain, and you can sign in with your finger on Touch ID, which is that button they have on the Mac. And it's not Windows Hello. And what that means is that doesn't pass through.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can't use it to sign into apps. your authentication passes through as it does natively in Windows. So it's pretty much what anyone would want. But of course, I think people look at this and they think, "Oh, this must be Windows Hello Fingerprint." And it's like it isn't.
No,
you have a PIN,
but
but from the sign-in screen, which you will see if that thing ever has to reboot or you boot the Mac, you just press the little button and it just works. It's nice.
Wow.
The other thing I would, there's other stuff, but most of it's like a new icon because Mac. But the other big one to me, and I haven't gotten this to work yet. I've gotten the extension to work. I haven't got the whole thing to work. They have a Visual Studio Code extension. A big part of their audience is developers, and they want to stay in Visual Studio Code. And you can manage Parallels now completely from within Visual Studio Code using this interface. You don't need to use the Parallels GUI. And so you have to install a couple of, like Docker style container somethings in Visual Studio Code. I just didn't want to create the accounts, but once you do, and I did get a live demo of it online, there's a Parallels button on the side in Visual Studio Code alongside the other ones that are there by default. You click on it, it's full interface. You can do whatever you want with the VMs. Beautiful. I mean, really kind of a neat, very special, kind of specially targeted tool. Cool. So pricing is unchanged, $99 a year if you want to do the subscription version, blah, 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 whatever. But and there's some other optimizations for like CAD type applications for students and professionals and blah, 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 because no one is doing that for ARM because there are so few users, but they're seeing a lot of that in Parallel. So they're doing it for you or for those application makers, actually. So anyway, great. Works great.
Nice.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Richard, what's coming up on Run As Radio?
Speaking of Mary Jo Foley, some time ago was exchanging some messages with MJ, and she was asking me if I wanted to talk to any of the Directions on Microsoft folks. And I said, I've always been looking for someone that didn't work for Microsoft that wanted to talk about Microsoft Fabric. Because there's not a lot of folks out there yet. It's kind of a new thing, only announced back in build. And I got myself an Andrew Snodgrass. So this is one of the Directions on Microsoft folks. Very enjoyable conversation. And he had a very measured view of Fabric. I mean, Fabric obviously is a group of existing products that are now being repackaged and reorganized with some new tooling to kind of get to the next generation of data analytics. It kind of goes hand in hand with new leadership at the data team at Microsoft as well. So it's going to be important. They would like you to believe it's important right now. I have some other shows coming that are already in the can along these lines. And one of the cautionary tales is like, if you're already deeply engaged in data analytics, step carefully into Fabric because it changes some things. But if you aren't, it's a really good time to move and get in early because they are offering some pretty cool capabilities. But this was sort of our first conversations in this space and what we're really trying to do here. Looking forward to seeing more. It's great to see some energy around this and just see how they're going to more tightly integrate together Power BI with all of the various data manipulation tools on the back end.
Very cool. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for.
And this one I've had.
Oh,
yes. Well, I wanted to go, I've been kind of bouncing around on some classics here, so I thought it was time to hit one of the classics.
Yep.
And certainly a favorite of mine as well. So let's tell the story of Oban because it's a great story. The distillery is one of the oldest in Scotland, originally built in 1794. It was built on the Bay of Oban, which in Gaelic is Ant Oban, which means the little bay. Now, there's been humans living there for a very long time. The distillery was kind of the first thing there. There was a farm and a distillery. The town grew around it. Although one of the renovations they did of the distillery in the late 1800s, they found a cave that found evidence of habitation going back to Mesolithic times, not even Neolithic. So very, very old. There's also an argument that those sets of caves, or these red sandstone caves, are the origin of the Stone of Destiny.
Love it.
If you mean the Stone of Scone?
Yeah, that's the Stone of Scone that ultimately ended up in Scone that all of the
kings,
the Ardric kings went to, and then along came Edward I in 1296, and he stole it, and then they were using it for the English kings, and then only it lived in Westminster Abbey until only in 1996 did they return the stone to Edinburgh Castle, although recently it left Edinburgh Castle because Charles III was coronated with kind of a stone of destiny.
It's kind of a funny thing, too. They have to make this whole ceremony taking it, and it's wild. It's really wild.
Well, and and of course, their argument is it's red sandstone. But I'd point out that red sandstone is everywhere in Ireland and England and Scotland. But okay. Anyway, let's talk about the distillery. So 1794 is very early on. The pair of brothers, John and Hugh Stevenson. They ran it till 1866 when they got into financial trouble. It moved around from a few different owners, including the folks who owned Altmore, until ultimately it landed in 1923 with the group that runs Dewar's. Dewar's in 25 becomes part of the Distillers Company, and that'll become relevant later. It is famously one of the smallest distilleries, arguably the second smallest distillery in Scotland, as well as being one of the oldest. It is exactly one wash still and one spirit still. You see them both there. They are a very old design. They have been replaced several times. If you take the tour, you will see a couple of the older ones in the still garden, as you do. But the design has remained consistent and is quite archaic. It is a very, very high reflux still design. So it takes a long time to produce with such small stills, so they don't put out a lot. For washbacks, they still use the old worm tun design for cooling. Again, super vintage 18th century approach where they're actually pumping the raw distillate outside into multiple loops of pipes in water that's run at relatively high temperature to cool the stuff down. It's all about keeping the distillate in contact with copper as long as possible, because it is nominally a Highland whiskey in the general categorization, but it is the westernmost of the West Highland distilleries. And so it kind of lives in both worlds. We usually think of Highland whiskeys as sort of fruity and light and sweet, and yet it's almost inside of the Isle of Skye, where Talisker is. And so there's actually a little bit of peat in Oban. It's part of the mash bill. And so while the stills are designed space side, the mash bill is a little more peaty. And so you get this sort of balance between the two. There is a group of folks who said that the Highlands, being the largest region, are actually misnamed and they should be broken down because there are style differences. And we've already bumped into this because we've talked about Glenmorangie and Dalmore, which are both very much farther north in what some folks call the North Highlands. Tomatin's up there as well. And in the east side of the Highlands, you get places like Fettercairn and Glengarroch, and then in the south, which they also arguably call the Midlands, distilleries most people haven't heard of, like Aberfeldy and Blair Atholl and Glenturret. And in the west, you have, of course, Oban, Dalwhinnie, Ben Nevis. And they all have a fairly common style of that balance between the salt peat and the sweet that is the Highlands. I would also then carve off another part of the Highlands really is I would also say, pushing back on this, that in the Talisker, Jura, Arran, Highland Park, which is actually on the Orkneys, nominally the same similar terrain, but they're all islands, different from Islay. One last point I'd make about the Oban is that it's considered one of the classic malts of Scotland, and a lot of people refer that to me. There were 6 whiskeys that are considered the classic malts. I would also remind folks that was a marketing strategy by the United Distillers. So when Dewar's became part of the Distillers Company, that was ultimately merged together with Arthur Bell & Sons, that then were both owned by Guinness, and that's in 87. And then all of this gets rolled up in 97 to become part of Diageo, along with Grand Metropolitan and a few others. And so in 88, when United Distillers was United Distillers, they did a marketing push called the Classic Malts of Scotland that lots of people refer to, and they used their own regioning for that. So they had Glenkinchie for the lowland, Dalwhinnie for the highland, Craggamore for the Speyside, Talisker from Skye, Lagavulin from Islay, and Oban from the West Highlands, which was probably the only time it had been referred to that way. They didn't mention Campbellton, which is part of the normal set of regions, but that's because the United Distillers didn't own a distillery in Campbellton, like Springbank or anyone's like this. And for the most part, this Oban 14 that I'm referring to is the only thing they were making. Remember, they're one of the smallest distilleries. They only make a few bottles. And so they just made one, the Oban 14. In recent years, this is largely an influence of Diageo owning them for the past 15 years or so. They've started to produce a few other distillations. They did a non-year appellated version called Little Bay, named after the Oban. There is a distiller's edition, which is, by the way, lovely, and it has additional finishing in sherry casks. They normally age purely in white oak and sherry. And so it's a very consistent product. You know what you're getting. I keep it on the shelf. It's reliable. If you're not into peaty scotches, this is a little bit of peat without poking you in the eye. It's something beyond a space side. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most original whiskeys of Scotland, going back well over 200 years.
They have an 18, but you like the 14.
The 14's the regular. The 18's a recent invention, relatively speaking. Just the past decade or so, they've been starting to make an 18 as well.
You don't need the 18. You don't need it.
I mean, if you like the new stuff.
Yeah, the 14, the 14's already $70. The 18 is more than twice that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Like, there's no inexpensive Obans, right?
That's well, it's so small. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you know what? When I'm assessing a whiskey bar that we've just walked into. Okay, if you have a small collection, they should have an Oban on the shelf. Yeah. Because it is one of the classics. And if they don't, we're probably in the wrong place.
There you go. So it's your litmus test for the whiskey bar.
In terms of the scope, or in terms of any bar, any whiskey bar ought to have one. But when you're a bar manager and you're starting to stock, when you're just doing basic brown liquors, you're going to have a Jim Beam and a Wild Turkey and a Glenfiddich, right? That's sort of the minimum.
You might have a Lagavulin if you really want to show off.
You may. If you Lagavulin because you're fancy. Right? Because it's 3 times the price. Because it does cost more. But as you start to round out a collection to get beyond just the common space, your Livet, Fiddick, and maybe a Balvenie, then your classic Ileys, a Bowmore and a Lefroy and maybe a Lagavulin, you're going to get a Highland of some kind. And what is it going to be? It's probably it should be Oban. That's the first one you would grab.
I look for an Aberlour, and if they don't have it, I leave.
You're
Thank you. I hope you destroy so you knock something down on the way out.
Screw you.
Aberlour and Bunda, or I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
I'm here for the castrings.
My friends, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Windows Weekly featuring Richard Campbell. He has a good Scottish name, and he's a good Scot. No true Scotsman would go into a bar without an Aberlour Bunda. That's all I'm saying.
Oban, Oban is like, my name is Oban. It means 8. What does that stand for? What is
the bay. It's the name of the bay.
Oh, the bay.
It's the shortening of Anthoban, which means Little Bay.
Little Bay. Little Bay. It's a little bay. That's all it is. Richard is at runasradio.com, and that's where you'll find that podcast and .NET Rocks. Are you, and this is moving day.
Yeah, it sounds like they're pretty much done. The big furniture's leaving today.
They're waiting for the chair.
We're going to camp in here. And they're not getting my chair.
Just like 2 big guys standing there like, how long is this going to take?
I am carrying my own chair out of here.
Richard,
they did admire my on-the-air light above the door, though. They like that.
More importantly, how does the whiskey collection get moved?
The whiskey collection has already moved. It's in boxes. I kept a couple of. I'll have a Lefroy and an Amrut, and that's it. It's here. They're both open.
That's
and mostly done.
Break glass if thirsty kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like I don't want to carry this quarter-filled bottle up there, so try and finish it.
PT.
Yeah.
Paul Campbell, Paul Thurrott. What is Thurrott? Is that French?
It's French-Canadian, and I am neither French nor Canadian.
There you go. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURRO good. Do become a premium member, support Paul, but also get all sorts of great extra stuff. The articles in the premium section are really good. In fact, they formed the basis of his newest book, Windows Everywhere, which is available at leanpub.com, along with the field guide to Windows 11. Maybe we'll be doing Windows 12 September 21st. We'll see. Maybe you'll have to start a whole new book.
It's going to be so different. I can't wait.
It's the AI version.
Yes.
We do this show every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, in theory, if Leo shows up. If he's late, maybe a little later. I'm sorry today. I was busy. Baldur's Gate was, I was stuck, and I couldn't leave until I moved.
Richard and I try to get through the awkward silence.
You seem to find something to talk about. Yes,
we're working on it.
We actually went live because it was such a good conversation. We thought, well, why hide this?
Sure.
11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. The live stream is operative day and night at live.twit.tv. There's audio and video there. You can even ask your smart assistant to, most of them, if you just say play Twit live. Some of them you have to say play Twit live. Sometimes you have to say on TuneIn or actually YouTube, something like that. But play with it. You will be able to get echo.
We'll look back on these days and laugh.
Yeah. It was all different languages. This is how the Tower of Babel began. It all was one language when we started. What else do I need to tell you?
Common people separated by a language? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We do make, of course, on-demand versions of the show available at twit.tv/dubdub for Windows Weekly. You can also find a YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. There's actually a link on the webpage. And you can, and I think this is the best way to do it, subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and that way you'll just get it automatically. You have a choice of audio or video. Thanks for joining us, you winners and dozers. Thank you, Paul and Richard. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.
Hey, we should talk Linux. It's the operating system that runs the internet, but your game consoles, cell phones, and maybe even the machine on your desk. But you already knew all that. What you may not know is that Twit now has a show dedicated to it, the Untitled Linux Show. Whether you're a Linux pro, a burgeoning sysadmin, or just curious what the big deal is, you should join us on the Club Twit Discord every Saturday afternoon for news, analysis, and tips to sharpen your Linux skills. And then make sure you subscribe to the Club Twit exclusive Untitled Linux Show. Wait, you're not a Club Twit member yet? Well, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and sign up. Hope to see you there.